Hey, Linda, are we? All right, well, we can get back into business. So we'll move to the second item on the agenda, which is our election of officers. So the floor is open. Yes, please make a motion for, let's start with the chair. Make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Jerry Nolte as chair of the Clay County Smithville Tiff
Yes,
Commission.
Smithville, just the city of Smithville, Tiff Commission.
Okay, Smithville.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Don. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, congratulations, Jerry. Nolte, do you, do you want to take it from here?
Absolutely, but please keep me on the straight and narrow.
Will do. We've got vice chair and secretary that we need to fill slots for. Is that on? There you go.
Very good. With that, I'll open the floor for nominations for vice chair. Are there anybody wishing to place a name in nomination for vice chair?
I would like to nominate Jennifer Justice.
Is there a second?
Second.
Very good. In that case, you good with that?
Yes, I'll accept.
I guess I wanted to give you at least one last chance to escape.
Thanks, Jerry.
With that, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Here's though, you can have this one and I'll take that one.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Thank you. Slightly.
That brings us to nominations for secretary. Are there any names that anyone would like to place a nomination for secretary?
I'll nominate Denise Harwood.
Is there a second? Very good. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations. I'm sorry, I need to write these down before I actually forget. Next on our agenda is approval of the February 23, 2023 TIF Commission Informational Meeting Minutes. Have they been distributed? Does everybody have copies of
Yes,
those?
you attach those. I would move that we approve those minutes.
Motion's been made for the approval of the minutes of February 23, 2023 TIF Commission meeting. Second? Very good. Discussion, seeing none. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I abstained because I was not at the meeting, but for the record, I did view the recording of that meeting.
That brings us to number 4, public hearings for the, public hearing for the 110 Smithville Tax Increment Financing Plan. So we will now open the public hearing for that. Do we want to hear from the applicant first, or what's our best procedure?
The procedure will be that I'll go first, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
And are you okay with me presenting from here, or do you want me to go to the podium? It's just a little easier microphone access. I'll take of course, I have a PowerPoint.
Before you start, what is my role as secretary? Am I taking notes of this entire meeting?
We have to have a secretary for the ordinances, but Linda will be taking notes.
Oh, yeah.
But please feel free to take notes and you guys can compare.
Before we get started, I know this is just a recently constituted TIF commission. And I believe that you're a special counsel to the TIF commission. I just want to make sure for administrative duties, could you provide the contract that has appointed you special counsel to the TIF commission? And obviously you can't pull it out right now, but please provide that. to
So
us.
my firm, Gilmore and Bell, is Special Economic Development Council and also bond counsel to the city of Smithville. So therefore, as Economic Development Council, this falls under our purview as council. And because this is the city of Smithville's TIF commission, we review the TIF plans that come through and then therein become Special Economic Development Council to the commission, since this is under the city's umbrella.
Okay, but you'll still provide us a
Yes,
copy of
we
the
have that.
contract.
I believe. Yeah.
So-
Thank you.
Are there any other questions before council begins presentation? Please proceed.
All right, so we're just going to do a quick little overview of the timeline process just before we get started, just so everybody remembers where we're at and what has happened. So as you can see in the TIF timeline, a developer generally approaches the city with a proposal. At that time, negotiations are initiated. The developer will approach the taxing jurisdictions. Once we have a plan prepared, it is then filed by the developer with the city. Per state statute, must be a request for bids and proposals. So that is done. You would have seen that with the first publication that went out that is required. There is a mailed notice to taxing jurisdictions, which is called a 45-day notice. There's a twice publication in the newspaper. The first one being also the request for bids and proposals. There's a mailed notice to the property owners, and then all leading up to this, which is the TIF commission hearing. So just so everyone's aware, what happens next after all of this? So there can be three things that happen. The meeting can be continued, which must occur within 30 days after the original hearing has opened, unless the mayor, or in the case of the statute, it says the chief elected official of the municipality who created the commission, which would be the mayor in this case, requests an extension, which can be done verbally in a meeting, and then the commission approves that by vote. There can be a recommendation in approval, and there can be a recommendation in opposition. So what you'll see, the resolution is a resolution in approval, which is generally what we do. And then that can be voted down, which would be a recommendation in opposition. All right. Oops, sorry. So what is the role of the TIF commission? So here, what the resolution provides for is that the body is recommending to the Board of Aldermen that you adopt an ordinance that makes the required findings that are required under the TIF Act. You approve the redevelopment project and the collection of tax increment financing within, and that they designate the developer as the developer of record. So those are the three things that you are recommending to the Board of Aldermen. And we'll go ahead and start with the required findings. I'm going to have them up here, but we're going to go through them line by line. So this was my memo that I provided. This is going to get boring, and I'm sorry, but we have to do it. All right. So just generally, the required findings are that the TIF plan itself includes the following items: a general description of the program to be undertaken to accomplish the objectives. So right now, the developer currently owns 2 parcels. The intention, I believe there are other parcels that are owned by the city, 3 parcels overall owned by the city, 1 that's adjacent to the hospital, 2 that are adjacent to the funeral home. The intention that's stated in the TIF plan is that they want to negotiate to purchase those lots from the city. That has not happened yet. That will be a separate process with the city outside of this. The developer has undertaken, as you've seen in the TIF plan, the design of the project. They plan to demolish and rehabilitate the current property. And then they will construct a project in accordance with this TIF plan and a to be negotiated TIF contract that will be between the city and the developer. They also have to include the estimated redevelopment costs. So the developer here is anticipating a total cost of the project to be $15,659,049. and anticipating reimbursable project costs, which are costs that are reimbursed through the TIF, the monies that are generated in the TIF, to be $1,229,000. They also have to include anticipated sources of funds to pay the costs. In addition to TIF revenues, the developer anticipates to obtain a private loan in the amount of approximately $8,925,000 and use approximately $5,504,391 of equity to pay for the remainder. They have
Hey,
to.
Megan,
Mhm.
I'm following along on your memorandum. Is that
Yes.
TIF amount, you said 100 or 1,229,000, and is that?
Yes, so they did in their sources and use table have the 1,265,000, but if you go through and we confirmed this with them, that was a question
Okay.
we asked too. Throughout the document, the number they are using that will be used in the TIF contract. So when we negotiate these, we put a cap, right, on the amount of reimbursable project costs they can receive.
Okay.
And it's going to be that 1,229,000.
Okay, total was just different on this line, so I just wanted to double check that.
Yes. They have to have an anticipated type and sources of funds to pay for the project costs. Again, it's a mixture of reimbursable project costs, private debt, and private equity. The TIF plan, they will need to talk, the TIF plan shows a potential loan payoff in 10 years. But the TIF is projected to last for 23 years, which is what we're paying attention to here today. Evidence of commitments to finance project costs, see Exhibit F. There's a letter from Bank Midwest. The development team has had prior loans with Bank Midwest. The next is anticipated type and term of obligations. No bonds are intended to be issued for this project. The TIF will be pay as you go. And a pay as you go TIF means as the project is built, the monies that flow into the special allocation fund from the increase in property taxes and sales taxes will then pay the developer back for approved reimbursable project costs. They have to include the most recent assessed valuation, which is the aggregate of all the properties of $87,270. They have to have an estimate of the future assessed valuation after the project is completed, which they have as $3,064,467. They have to include general land uses. This will be a mixed-use development with residential, commercial, and retail uses. So the next required finding is that the redevelopment area is blighted. I'm going to read the blight definition. Per the TIF Act, a blighted area is an area which, by reason of the predominance of insanitary or unsafe conditions, deterioration of site improvements, the existence of conditions which endanger life or property by fire and other causes, or any combination of such factors, retards the provision of housing accommodation or constitutes an economic or social liability or a menace to the public health, safety, or welfare in its present condition and use. The entire area does not need to be blighted. There just needs to be blight within the redevelopment area. There's a blight study that is on Exhibit B. It was performed as required by the TIF Act by a certified urban planner. And then further, the developer has included an affidavit attesting to the blighting conditions within the redevelopment area. Now, I included in my memo on page 3, a detailed analysis of a summary of what the blight study had and what factors they have considered as prevalent in the redevelopment area, primarily in the hospital property. They have stated that there are insanitary and unsafe conditions, a deterioration of site improvements, existence of conditions which endanger life or property by fire and other causes, conditions which constitute an economic or social liability, and conditions that constitute a menace to public health, safety, or welfare in its present condition. Next, we have to satisfy the but-for test. So the but-for test is that the proposed redevelopment area satisfies the but-for test in that the area has not been subject to growth and development through investment by private enterprise and would not reasonably be anticipated to be developed without the adoption of tax increment financing. This property has been through multiple owners throughout the years. The developer has included in Exhibit I a pro forma that shows their rate of return without incentives after paying their financial obligations, which would be 5.89%, and the rate of return with incentives after paying its financial obligations of 10.69%. The developer has stated that there is a considerable amount of risk associated with this project, and the rate of return without the use of incentives makes this project not financially feasible. Number 4 is that the TIF plan is in conformance with the city's comprehensive plan for the development of the city as a whole. This development conforms with numerous portions of the city's comprehensive plan, which can be found online on the city's website. This plan was created through a process that took place from January 2020 through October 2020 and was prepared by Future IQ and JS&A Economic Development Consulting. So just as a quick overview, the comprehensive plan details the following priorities, which this falls into. HN 1.1, support providing additional housing stock throughout the city of Smithville to meet current and future residents' needs by encouraging new residential development in areas identified in the future land use map, which includes the downtown area. HN 3.1, encourage additional residential units near existing residential uses to strengthen the neighborhoods of Smithville. HN 3.2, encourage clustered residential development patterns with connective, active, and passive open space and neighborhood and community amenities. HN 3.4, encourage mixed-use developments in Smithville's downtown and the area between downtown and the city's southern municipal boundary as a mechanism to create vibrant neighborhoods. HN 4.3, encourage new residential development in and near Smithville's downtown to create a live, work, and play district. HN 5.6, monitor housing affordability, working to ensure housing options for all income levels in Smithville. And RC 2.1, encourage development, mainly residential development near existing and proposed trail networks. Next, number 5, the TIF plan includes estimated dates of completion of the project and estimated dates for the retirement of obligations to be incurred. There was a typo in my memo. I apologize. I had spring of 2023. It should be summer of 2023 for construction to start. But they anticipate this to be completed by the end of 2024. And the TIF is expected, as in here, to be in place for 23 years. Number 6, a relocation assistance plan has been developed. One is included as per the TIF Act. But the redevelopment area here consists of vacant buildings and property. And so there is no business or residents that will need to be relocated. Number 7, a cost benefit analysis is included showing the economic impact of the TIF plan on each taxing district and political subdivision within the redevelopment area if the project is built pursuant to the TIF plan or is not built. The individual taxing jurisdiction summaries, which are included in the CBA attached to the TIF plan, is Exhibit G. Show the projected tax revenues to be generated by the project for each taxing district. The cost benefit analysis, as you'll see, is projected over 30 years. This tax increment financing only lasts for a maximum of 23, but this includes a projection of the tax revenues after the TIF will be terminated. Then all taxes are flowing back to the taxing jurisdictions. The plan does not include initial development or redevelopment of any gambling institution. This TIF plan does not include that. The areas selected for redevelopment project only includes those parcels of real property and improvements thereon, which will be directly and substantially benefited by the project improvements. Here, the redevelopment area only includes area that will be included in the project or is intended to be included in the project. The hospital and the lots directly around it will be the site of the project, as you see in the projected elevations and site plan, and the lots adjacent to the hospital across the street, which are next to the funeral home, are currently owned by the city and I believe it is the intention of the developer to use those as parking. This will be subject to an additional agreement between the city and the developer. Just some additional items, financial feasibility. The developer should show evidence that the use of TIF assistance, the proposed project is financially feasible to construct with TIF, which here they have shown that with their rate of return. They've stated that with that rate of return, it would be financially feasible. So those are the required findings that the board or the commission must find, recommend either an approval to the Board of Aldermen or not.
You want me to see if there are any questions so far? Okay, are there any questions of council at this point? Okay, Seeing none.
Okay. All right, we'll leave it up to the developer.
That's okay. That was where I was kind of looking at you, give me a little bit of guidance,
Yeah,
make sure I was going the right way.
We'll go to the developer.
Please come forward.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Andrew Lawnard. I am an attorney with the Levy Craig Law Firm in Kansas City. I'm just going to do a quick introduction and make a few comments here. The primary or the brunt of the presentation will be done by Eric and Don, who are part of the development team. Myself and my colleague Daniel Yoza have been working with 110 Smithville on this project for quite some time. And I also want to say right out of the chute, I want to give a thank you to Megan Miller, who we've been working with on this project for probably 18 plus months. I know that my guys have been working on the project in one way or another, even longer than that, up to 3 years. As a lot of you likely know, Eric Craig is in real estate here in town and in the area. He's got an office across the street. One of the things that struck me about this project from the get-go, more so than other projects that I get involved with sometimes, is that these guys have a tie here to the community. They care about the community. Eric office is right next door to where this location, this project is contemplated to be. So I know that they have a lot of invested, they care a lot about this project. They want to see it do well. They're going to be right here in the community with it. They're not some developers from somewhere else that are doing this project and have no footprint here in the area. At transitioning into the next phase here, I understand the last 48 hours have been kind of an interesting time for our development team as we headed towards this presentation. We've known for a while that tonight would be the night we would do the presentation, and have been getting prepared for that, putting slides together, getting things together, practicing, getting excited for the presentation. Within the last 48 hours, it's come to our attention, and through some credible sources, so to speak, that there were perhaps some conversations amongst various TIF members that occurred outside of a setting like this. And while, I think it's important to point out, while we've got members of the public here, and just to say it again in front of everyone, it's very important. And I think in terms of fairness, and not only in terms of the public's visibility into how these things get decided, that those conversations take place out in the open. That if there are positives or negatives to say about the project, that, we as the developer have a chance to respond to that we can discuss it in an open forum. If there are questions or concerns, we can respond to those questions or concerns. And we certainly are here tonight to do that. So prior to the meeting, we had some conversations about, well, should we request a continuance? Should we go forward with the project? And ultimately, the decision has been made that, we're excited about this. We want to get this going. We want to show you what we've been working on all this time. I do think it's important for me to note that I just don't want it to catch anybody by surprise. We still will probably tomorrow or the next few days, make an open records request so we can understand anything that occurred discussing the project that we weren't involved with. And, I'm saying that as a lawyer representing my guys. I want to do the best job that I can for them. And I think that we need to understand those conversations, what meetings took place, who was involved, what was discussed, et cetera, et cetera. And we're preserving those rights to do that, not waiving any of those rights by doing the presentation here tonight. With that said, I do think that this is a great project for the community. A lot of time and effort and thought has gone into it. And I know my guys are excited to share it with you.
Yes, Commissioner Wilson.
I'm curious as to why we skipped item 4. Which is the public hearing.
We're currently in the public hearing. This is it.
So
No, public comment, we're doing the presentations and we're still in the public hearing.
Okay.
And then public comment will be after the developer's presentation.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for asking the question. Look, oh, I'm in charge of this. Not disclose that. Right click, normal click, I'll figure it out. Okay. Hello, my name is Eric Craig, for those that I have not met, so. Thank you for your time. Appreciate the opportunity to discuss kind of our excitement about this project. Little quick snapshot of who we are. I moved to Smithville in 1997, went to school here. I currently am raising my 2 daughters here. I also own and operate several businesses in the area, actually just right down here in downtown. I have 7 commercial properties that I own downtown, as well as 4 residential properties within a block of where I'm standing right now. So obviously I believe in this area and absolutely adore it. My partners are a group out of Kansas City that have been involved in many successful projects, from apartment buildings to residential properties, commercial real estate. Many of these projects have been built and are still thriving in the Plaza, Westport, North Kansas City areas. They also own commercial real estate here as well. They have 3 residential developments that are going to be coming up in the future. And to date, right now, they're the city's biggest residential permit puller in the last 5 years, with homes approaching close to 100 permits that have been pulled in the last 5 years. So they are building rooftops, which in return creates tax dollars. So our goal for this project is to provide housing for seniors, for workforce, and individuals who want to live in our community but cannot afford to buy a home or commit to a long-term housing. Provide some more commercial space for restaurants. We've got an anchor tenant that is a restaurant that is a known tenant that is excited about this opportunity to actually be downtown. We also, just to remove a blighted property that has been condemned for over a decade and has received over 40 code violations from the city. For those in the public, I've read comments that I haven't received any code violations. I have, but trust me, I've received quite a few and have taken care of those items upon request by the city. Also, to generate more tax dollars for our city and schools, where currently the property equates to $3,500 a year in tax dollars. Really, the challenges are, for those of you that live here, I mean, it's honestly a challenge for me to not only drive by it every day, but I office next to it. And so to me, it's been, the biggest eyesore of our community. I personally believe it's kind of an embarrassment. And it also has been consistently involved in vandalism. Just 2 weeks ago, I got calls from the police department that there were 4 teenagers that were juveniles that were in the basement taking pictures. And I'm going to go through some slides here and you're to see how terrifying that is. If those were your kids, it's not a good idea. Current condition of the property, blight study was completed in December of 22. The location of the Spelman Hospital, it was built in 1938 and acted in that capacity until 1960s. In 2017, the city of Smithville passed on purchasing the property due to the condition of the property and cost associated with mitigating the asbestos and renovations. At that costing them to just try to rehab the building. This is again, back in 2017, it was over $2.8 million to do so. This is on public record that you can find. This is a current, within the last year, Google aerial. Yes, those are 3 30-foot tall trees growing in the middle of the building. This is a picture of the basement where the first floor and roof have collapsed into the basement. Obviously, this is where stairway has totally collapsed.
This is one of the hallways. What's really interesting is the floor joists of the property are made of steel and they're totally rusted out. And the stability is not there at all. It's terribly unsafe. Asbestos floor tiles were used throughout the entire property. Dry rot, again, asbestos floor tiles. There are several rooms that literally have dirt floors. And I'm really kind of going over this, guys, because there's been some comments about why can't we save it? Why can't we rehab it? It is impossible. Vandalism consistently been going on, which has been a problem for the police department, for neighbors that live around it. Thankfully, there's great neighbors that live there and they typically call me a lot and I just walk across from my office and typically take care of those issues. This is the rendering of our project that we are naming Main and Mill. Obviously it sits on Main Street and Mill Street. We will be working with Main Street District for input of exterior materials. Again, this is a rendering. We do want it to flow a little bit better than like what this image looks like here. So we are going to be open to some comments and feedback on some exterior materials that can actually help be cohesive to the project. Site location, I think most everybody knows where it is, but just so you have it, it's highlighted in red. Kind of gives you the flow of what's currently downtown for those of you that are not from here. Kind of gives you a location of other buildings, City Hall being right now. This building's basically across the street from us. This might be a little difficult for some of you to see, but kind of shows the layout of the project. You'll see that there's actually two buildings. The front side of the property, which is right here. Oops, that's not working well. Oh my God. There we go. It's reflecting back, I guess. But you'll see it right here. This is Main Street. This is where the commercial side is going to be on the main level. There is a patio that's right here, restaurant tenant. There's going to be some outdoor seating for that, which will be nice. And then above that is going to be 3 stories. It is a 4-story building. There's been some comments that are incorrect about it being a 5-story building, which is not correct. And then this other side here to the north is along Mill Street here. And then on the back side, this is Church Street that you see here. This is my office. And then this is the alleyway. I actually own this parking area here, which will be additional parking that will be there as well. And then this is like current parking that you see. That's the city lot that the city of Smithville owns right now. Kind of an overview. I cannot see because, okay, I think I can pull this off. I could drag them out of the way. Okay. Sorry, Steve, I'm gonna drag you out of the way, I guess, or make you whoever's on here. Yeah. So I'm a Mac guy. I'm not a PC guy, so. Let me just start. So there's gonna be 31 1-bedroom apartments, 24 2-bedroom apartments, 18 studios, and then 12 lofts, which is like a studio with a loft bedroom area. In the upcoming slides, I've got the floor plans of those and then also the rent rates that we're gonna be incorporating with that. We will have 7,430 square foot of commercial space. And like I said, we'd have a well-known anchor restaurant tenant. Thank you so much. That will be needing 4,000 square foot of that. And their plans include a covered patio eating area. This next slide right here that you see is the view from Mill Street. So this would be if you're looking towards the east. So if you're on Mill Street looking east back towards downtown and square. This is the view if you're looking north towards the building on Main Street. And this is the corner of Main and Mill. This is the location here that our restaurant tenant that we've been in discussion with is excited about, and then this area right there on that side is a little patio area to the side of that. The rest will include hopefully just some retail, mom and pop shops, boutiques. You know, we're hoping for some good tenants there. This is a view to the east. So if you're looking back towards, kind of back behind my office, this is the view from the north. And this is the angle between the two buildings, just kind of showing that kind of corner there. This is the backside of the commercial space. That's why you see these doors here. That's going to be accessible to the retail and also restaurant location. And then this is the view looking back towards Mill. This is our studio unit that you see here. Rent rate's going to be $900 a month. And it is, our studio is approximately 600. No, I'm sorry. Our studio is 410 square foot. We will have 18 of those in this project. This is our studio with loft. We are going to have these are 660 square foot. They're going to be 12 units. This is our one bedroom. There's our 31 units and they will rent for $1,100 a month. And they are 650 square foot. This is our 2-bedroom layout. We have 24 units. The rent rate will be $1,500 a month and they are 925 square foot. Now, we are going to have in our leases, we're going to have restrictions in regards to how many occupants can be in certain floor plans. For an example, our studio apartment, we are going to allow for there to be 2 adults and no children above the age of 5. Our studio with lofts, we're going to have the same requirement, 2 adults and no children above the age of 5. For our 1-bedroom, we are going to have 2 adults. And then obviously, if there is a child, not at the age of 5, I don't think you're going to see a child older than that sleeping out on a couch, hopefully. So we're trying to eliminate that from occurring. And then our 2 bedrooms, we are going to have a max restriction of 4 persons, can consist of an adult, 3 children, just no more than 4 occupants to a 2-bedroom apartment. What we're trying to eliminate is there's been a lot of discussions about how many children are going to live in these units. Don's going to touch on that a little bit more in depth, but there seems to be some discussion that some think that there's going to be a lot of kids that are going to be living in this. We do want kids to be living in these, but we don't want kids living in a studio or studio with loft apartment. So parking has kind of been the other big discussion. It's been talked about a lot. On site, there's 92 parking spots that you can see there that are counted. These are renderings that I actually just got updated, and I'm sorry to get these slides over to you guys, but this one on the right is actually the funeral home property that the city owns to the west of the funeral home. Let me show you a map here. So this is that location right here. This is the funeral home that you see that my little mouse is on. And then this is another city lot that is over to the south side of the senior citizen facility that you see there. I do want to make something very clear that these will remain public parking. This is not just going to be for Main and Mill. This is going to be open public parking. I'm going to go back. Again, 92 spots on site. 42 spots. I refer to it as the north lot or the lot that's adjacent to the west of the funeral home. And then this is the lot that's south of the senior citizen. So that's 39, which is a total of 173 total parking spots. I'm gonna have Don step up and kind of go over some more of the logistics and the
Eric,
analytics. Yeah.
so you intend to purchase those lots and redevelop them? Is that what you're gonna do?
Yeah, we're gonna purchase those lots and then we're gonna do the improvements to those. And again, they will stay public parking. Concrete. Yes. Concrete, right? Preferably concrete. Any other questions? So what I plan to do is let Don step up. He's kind of overseeing the finances on this, the analytics. So he's going to be able to dive into a lot more questions. And then I'd like the opportunity to kind of come back up and close out, if that's okay with you guys. If there's throughout the whole process, if there's any questions that you guys have, I might have to jump up here. So I'm happy to do that. So.
Are there any questions at this moment? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hi, I'm Don Coleman. I've worked as basically a financial consultant with the development group for a number of years and have helped them finance numerous projects throughout Kansas City. We've worked together quite a bit over the years and worked together with numerous lenders and so on also to get projects financed. So I've been working on this with them for a while, helping develop pro formas and develop some of the analytics and things that we need for this project. So I'll walk through, I know everybody's, I presume everybody's received the giant packet with thousands of cells of data that are really small and hard to read. And I'm going to try to bring some of the essence of this project and what the strategy is more to light here. As Eric was mentioning, this is the unit mix here. Eric mentioned the unit mix that we have, and this is really where it all starts, is what are the units, what rents can be generated, and what is really your top line revenue. That's obviously the start with any real estate project. And from there, we figure out how to try to make it work. We went to Valbridge Property Advisors, who is a really renowned appraisal firm. We've worked with them a lot. Lenders really like them. And they did a market analysis for us to help develop both on the monthly rent as well as a rent per square foot where they think it should come out. And so we took their advice and started our model with what their recommendations were. Some of the interesting things about this from a financial standpoint, 72% of the units are studios and one bedrooms. And that's by design, partly to get more tenants in there, but it also generates more rent per square foot. The units are designed, these are a little bit smaller than you would find in like a big garden apartment complex. They're probably on average 10% smaller. That's been a trend in design, but once again, to that dollar per square foot, it does help. And then the target market, what Valbridge did in their market study is they evaluated the demographics and the population and really tried to determine, based on this design and this configuration and this specific market, who our target market would be. And they've identified, as we suspected, would be young professionals and empty nesters. That's the market that they really think is going to fill this building. So that's sort of the overview on that. I'm going to go through a few financial things here. I wasn't quite sure how big these screens were going to be, but This is the development budget. It's also in your packet. As Megan was mentioning before, she hit on the bottom line number down here of about 15.6 million for the total cost to build that configuration that we've just shown you. There's an array, obviously they had to buy land. There's site work, a lot of site work that needs to be done. We've recently learned actually that our demolition number is low for all the reasons that Eric just went through with asbestos and things like that. Hard costs, that's the actual construction. That's the visible stuff you see really going on when they start framing and building. And then all kinds of soft costs. There's, get a project like this out of the ground, there's legal costs and architecture and more legal costs and more architecture. So you can see the types of things. It's expensive just to launch a project. Really what I wanted to get focused in on was the operating pro forma. And when we completed the information that was requested for the models in the TIF application, they really didn't dwell down into stuff. And I really wanted to show if there are people that are really interested in and understand commercial real estate and multifamily, how this property really operates. The goal of it all obviously is net operating income. We have the expenses that we established through our market research. We have all the property expenses. The developer has managed thousands of units around the city of all different types. So they have a very keen sense of what it costs to operate these properties. And so we feel pretty good about our NOI, our net operating income. And this is stabilized on the year 2025. Just because we can sort of see that far out, it's only a couple of years, 10 years out, 15 years out. Honestly, it's hard to prognosticate on that stuff. But we can all establish a good baseline for the year 2025 and feel relatively good about the number that we're hitting. So we go through that, and based on that cash flow, we have determined on current interest rates and everything else, the maximum loan that this income will yield. And that's about where we're at right now. And it's been fluctuating, honestly, since we submitted this. Rates have gone up a little, they've gone down a little, they've gone back up. The Fed just raised rates again last week. So we're subject to a lot of issues there. And I think we'll talk about that just a little bit more. The other point I wanted to mention, we've concluded, and you can see here, our property taxes are pretty much always the biggest item that you have in your expenses when you're operating real estate. And so we've calculated what our property taxes should be in that first full year of operations. And I'll show you how we did that, because that's what we're all here to talk about, is what happens with this money each year. So we've gone through, there's two ways that we're going to be able to capture some money. And the property taxes are allocated out to each jurisdiction. And then we're also going to get a little bit of revenue from sales taxes because we have that commercial component. And so for property taxes, here's everybody who gets a piece. For sales tax, here's everybody who gets a piece. And this is the tax rate. So we're paying the 7.1% on property taxes. And what we're here to discuss today is, based on that, how much can the TIF capture? In other words, the borrower pays the full tax amount, and then some of it goes to the jurisdiction and some of it goes back to an allocation fund that can then be used to reimburse costs. That's where this really benefits the property. Same with the sales tax. Now, one of the measures that is really looked at is, if this property continues on for another 10 years, what do you get? Well, right now, the entire tax bill is only $6,600 or $6,800. That's all that's being collected. if this property is developed as proposed, each of these jurisdictions is going to get substantially more tax revenue. Right now, you're getting your share of $6,000 a year. That will go up significantly. And so the ratio of what you're collecting now. So in other words, I'm going to use the school district here a lot because it is the big, the biggest one. It's roughly it gets 2/3 of that property tax bill, really. So it's the most significant. But if nothing happens, the net present value of these cash flows right now, the way it's been going for the last 10 years, they'll have a net present value over the analysis period of 45,000. If it's built, their revenues will go up substantially, their net present value. So it's 26 times greater than what they're getting today. And you can see the different, some of these groups get both property tax and sales tax. Some only get, one or the other. But you can see there's substantial economic benefit to the taxing jurisdictions by proceeding with this project. Even with the Tiff request. The next thing I'm going to dig into, so that's where the tax money all goes. And as I mentioned, the school district is the 800-pound gorilla. We went through, and Eric already alluded to how to manage the age of people and so on. But I'm looking at it just from a statistical standpoint. So from the National Multifamily Housing Association, you can see here, multifamily renters, only 14% of those households have school-aged children. Most school-aged children live in single-family owned homes or single-family rented homes. So you take that 14% of those households, and here was another really interesting thing. As the building gets newer and newer, the child count goes lower and lower. That's because this is the shiny new property with the highest rent. And these are smaller units too, but the shiny new higher rental units are going to be young professionals or empty nesters, not likely to have children in their units. So you can see only 10.8% of new buildings, new households in a rental even have a kid, a school age kid. So there's some other statistics, children per house, per 100 households. These are based on 2-bedroom averages. We only have not even 30% of our units are 2 bedrooms. So it's kind of grossly overstated. But the bottom line is, I think the most sound statistic is right here that, a new property is going to have 10.8. We've allocated 11.4% of our units will have school-age children. So let's look at that in detail based on this unit mix. Studios, we don't anticipate any studios having kids. Maybe a studio loft, it would be kind of weird. 1 bedroom, extremely tight because it's just you look at the size of this, 650 square feet. The average amount of square feet in an apartment per person is 525 square feet. So even our largest 2-bedroom property, from kind of household standard living doesn't even really cut it. Most 2 bedrooms are going to be 1,000 to 1,100. This is, a little bit denser. Obviously, the commercial doesn't generate any children. So we've looked at this, we've extrapolated out how many children we think at any given point in time could be living there. And then not all students are going to be new to the district either. Looking at various cities and anecdotal properties, we think there's going to be at least half of the units filled with people that already live here. This is going to be a super nice project, and people that live here are going to want to move into this. So We think maybe five students would move in. At a cost of $11,000 a year, it's $53,000 to accommodate, the additional students that will be generated by this project. To take that further, based on those calculations, and by the way, I did get data from our market, from Valbridge, from our market study group. They actually, for this area, for Class A properties, are actually estimating that only 5% of the households in a project like this will even have a student age kid. And they've got that because they have access to property manager data that we can't just get to. So if you look at the total amount, remember that 219 number? Well, the amount that's allocated to the school is this 148. And what we've proposed is that the school district gets half and we get half. The school district's already getting $4,000 a year, so that'd bump them up to $76,000 a year. At a cost of students at $53,000, that means they're making about a $21,000 surplus as soon as we hit that fully occupied number. So, and that's going to grow over the years. Now the expenses for students is going to grow, but the rent's going to grow, property taxes are going to grow. So it seems like a long process, but places like Briarcliff right now are just about to come off of their TIF from 23 years ago, and they are going to get a massive boost. So you do need to take a long-term look at TIF programs. But the point is, we really believe there's going to be a surplus. This project will add a surplus above and beyond any impact of students that the school district needs to accommodate. And then once it burns off, you can see, we're projecting way out there, but if things just go normally, they're making quite a surplus at that point. So that's our basic logic of how we arrived at this. Now each district, I could go through this for each district, but I think that would wear everyone out. Each taxing district. So I wanted to point out in much simpler than the massive package you have of the effect of a TIF, without a TIF and with a TIF. Revenue doesn't change, expenses don't change, NOI is roughly the same. And then you're going to have a first mortgage payment. The construction lenders it doesn't matter if you have a TIF or not, the construction lender is going to max out at right now 55 to 60% loan to cost. That's just it. And so then you'll have net cash flow after debt service, and all the way down through there, that's the same. Where it gets a little different, because we have a TIF and we have income from the TIF, it boosts up the net cash flow. See that number, that 143 there is what we would get in, roughly in 2025. We can use this cash flow to then finance additional proceeds to help pay for the property. And so if it costs us this to develop at the 15 million, and we have a maximum loan amount of roughly 8.9 million, the TIF will enable an additional 1.229 million that we believe we can finance to help reimburse the developer for the costs of getting this piece of land turned around. So that's roughly where we anticipate this will come out. What that means is how much more cash do you have to put into the project? They've already put out a bunch of cash on buying the land and paying attorneys and paying architects and doing third-party studies and things. So there's a lot of cash already flowing. And so what that does, and there's a couple interesting statistics. Megan mentioned the IRR is in the 5% range without a TIF, and it's over 10 with it. nobody's gonna take on a development project with a 5% IRR. 10 in this environment, in my opinion, is very modest. I think if these guys weren't so committed to Smithville and to the Northland, I don't know that you would get investors to do it for, under 12 or 14. But a couple other measures, once this thing is in and it's built and it's cash flowing, the first year out of the box, without a TIF, they're getting a 2.7% cash on their equity and only 3.9 on their equity. It's terrible. It's you can put your money right now in a CD and make more money than that. And they're taking on development risk just to get a nominal profit in the early years. Yes, the profit goes up, rents hopefully go up, valuations go up. Another item that was not requested, but I put in here anyway, it's a very simple multiplier. You put a certain amount of money in, how much do you get back? Well, without the TIF, they would make their initial investment, hopefully get 1.7 times their money back. With the TIF, they would get 2.6 times their money back. This is a very simple back of the napkin calculation. It's not as complicated as IRRs and NPVs and all that. Anything under 2 for a development, I would never even consider. They really should be closer to 3, considering the amount of risk that they're taking on. And to do it for anything less than that is it's just not going to happen. Some of the risks that they're taking on, like I said, you could take your $5 million investment and you could put it into a mutual fund or CD or a real safe bond investments or something, I don't know. And you would make decent money. But right now they're dealing with interest rate risks. It's been bouncing around. It's tough to pin it down right now. Construction costs, everybody knows about inflation. Since we started working on this thing a year or so ago and doing the financial analysis, costs have gone way up. Now contractors are getting more competitive because, construction projects are slowing down. Maybe we'll do well on competitive bids, but it doesn't look that way right now. Everybody's heard about supply chain issues. We didn't have a war going on, when we started this project. Different administrations, that can be good or bad. So there's a lot of risks that these guys are taking, even just local conditions. Smithville falls out of favor or Smithville gains a bunch of great employers. These things, they're risks, sometimes they're opportunities, but this is the unknown that they're facing. And that's why really kind of getting the TIF brings it from an unfavorable investment relative to all the risk. And it's a modest request relative to most TIFs I've seen. It's a very modest request. And it gets it from an investment that won't happen to something that's likely to happen. I think they're willing to take these even with the TIF, accept these lower returns just because it's a very solid and very desirable project that the community seems to really want. And I do anticipate good leasing on it. I anticipate it will lease up pretty quickly just because it's going to be such a great product to have here. So I think if not for that aspect, even with the TIF, it would not be really an advisable project. I don't think an out-of-town investor or developer would do this. I think you're only getting this opportunity to get this project at these returns because the developer is local, they're invested in the community, they're invested in the Northland, and they understand it. But to convince another developer to come in and do this, I think the property would sit there for a long time. We've kicked around a bunch of other ideas. If we don't have this really much needed product, what can we have? We can have short-term rentals. We could do a hotel. We could do affordable housing, has great financing, maybe a nursing home. There's commercial options. I don't know specifically what's needed, but co-working spaces become popular in suburban areas like this, if you could have a little co-working space, but then you're back to the same thing. Where do you live? Well, we didn't get the apartment, so that doesn't solve any problems. I mean, you can go on with different things that could be done, but this seems to be the most sound investment in the housing stock that is desirable for Smithville. And so, really this is what it comes down to. I mean, this is a long-term committed developer, not just committed to their project, but committed to the area. And without the tax increment financing, it will be back to the drawing board. I couldn't advise them to accept something with a 5 or 6% IRR. That just, I couldn't recommend that to anybody. I don't think I could sell it. Nor would I try. So that's where we're at. I don't know, Eric. Okay.
Questions?
Yeah.
Well, I guess the elephant in the room, I think Mr. Coleman referred to it as, is that the school district does not agree with the figures that you've been presented. So, and not to get too much into the details, but going back to your presentation of the cost to the school district, did you include those costs in the cost benefit analysis?
The format does not require that. That's why I brought it out tonight and showed it.
Okay, well, I mean, statutory requirement for the state of Missouri says to do a cost benefit analysis.
Right? And I use.
And just, let me finish my question.
Sure.
It is called a cost benefit analysis. You did an analysis on benefits
Mhm,
and you provided no cost.
mhm.
So you did half the analysis.
I think there's a little bit of a discrepancy in the definition, and Megan, you can correct me if I'm wrong. When they use the phrase cost benefit, they're looking at the cost of giving up tax income relative to the total benefit. So the benefit is, in their definition, is designed to show the revenues that you will be getting with the TIF in place, and then the cost in terms of what revenues you're giving up. That's my interpretation.
But you've included zero cost for the school district in your analysis. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct.
No, in your cost benefit.
But that was the format that we were required to use. And that's why I wanted to bring it to everybody's attention. They didn't ask for this. It's not included.
Right.
It was
Well,
not prescribed, but I wanted to make sure that
and so
your definition of cost. benefit-
you've never seen a cost benefit with cost in it? I guess you've done these analysis before for residential TIFs. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
Big
and you,
mixed
when
use, yeah, all kinds.
you
of
did
stuff.
mixed use, when you did it, you did not include cost? Because I'm used to seeing cost and a
Right.
cost benefit.
Right. And that's why I took their template and I added this additional information to address that, because I knew that was a concern of yours and of the school districts.
Okay.
And that's why I tried to just address it head on and put it out here so you can see your operating cost. Whereas I think the state is viewing, or the TIF is using it, just what's the cost of the revenue you're giving up.
Well,
So,
yeah, and your presentation shows all benefits to all jurisdictions, saying that we're gonna receive all this money,
mhm,
but you're not presenting any cost at all. Everything in your presentation just says benefit to everybody.
right, but the benefit is what you get if this development proceeds relative to the cost of the tax you have to give up as part of the TIF.
Right.
That's the definition in the models, am I correct?
Yes, that is the standard cost benefit analysis. It shows the economic impact, right? Based on the tax revenues you would be getting with the TIF and without the TIF, not your operating costs. We don't do operating costs for any of the taxing jurisdictions.
So I see the cost for additional students. Is that part of the analysis too? Because
No,
we're
he's
not
talking,
following exactly.
Yeah,
what-
he's not, he's referencing the cost benefit analysis that was attached to the TIF plan as exhibit, G, yeah, as exhibit G. So what you're looking at with the cost benefit analysis that's required as a finding is showing the economic impact of the TIF plan on each taxing jurisdiction. If it's built pursuant to the TIF plan or if it is not built. So it's what taxing revenues you would be getting if it was built and the taxing revenues you would be giving up. That is what the state, now I understand what you're saying, but that is what I'm just here to state what the statutory rule is.
Okay, so I guess my next question is, do you have a projected cost, Scott?
Well, I mean, that's the other thing, right? So he had 53,000 annually. The next question would be, the gentleman also does a net present value to discount the benefit, correct?
Yeah,
That
that's
is-
in the,
yeah,
That's
Okay.
included.
So we're just talking
included.
about the benefit and cost. But net present value is not in state law either, is it?
No, but that's something they have included.
whether it's in law or not, it's prescribed that we have to present that.
Right, and it's usually practiced to show cost. Okay, and so they're showing zero cost to the school district for 23 years.
No, there's a cost. There's definitely a cost.
Not in your presentation,
Yes, yeah.
Wasn't it the
oh,
kids that-
not in your cost benefit analysis.
So. the
Can you point us
cost-
to exactly what document you're talking about, though? So that we can all get on the same page and.
It's to me talking.
Okay, well, exhibit G is one of them. That's where they're just showing all the benefit with no cost to all the jurisdictions.
Okay,
Okay. That's kind of a summary. You can find the cost benefit.
so the second page goes into the cost benefit analysis with the taxing jurisdictions,
Yeah,
gives the percentage totals.
right. Yep. So there you go.
And so if you have a cost that you're
So-
saying needs to be addressed, if you know what that is, if you want to share that, that's what I'm kind of trying to get
Right.
at here.
And so that's the, we know at a minimum, his projections say 53,000 annually. We disagree with the number of kids and children, and we've had this discussion with Mr. Coleman. It's not a secret. The other thing is if any of those children are of special needs. So our cost goes from 11,000 to somewhere between 30 to 50,000 a student.
What does
And-
the school district project the number of children that they think would be?
I would have to check with our CFO.
Okay,
I would imagine that, and our data showed there was gonna be more.
I would just have to say that as a family provider, I'm not sure that their analysis is off in this particular instance. I can't address the cost benefit that Scott's speaking of specifically. I think there may be additional costs that we're not seeing here. I don't think that it sounds like that's statutorily required though by Missouri state law. But I would say that I don't think you're far off with the number of kids. So I don't think that the school district will be subject to significantly more children being in this type of apartment. I've owned 2 bedrooms before. I can tell you that a lot of people don't tend to cram in them in Clay County. It's just not what happens. So that particular thing is not a major concern in this. I would like to hear
Right.
more about the cost.
And I
that
would
you're
like-
Concerned about though.
And fair enough. I would like you, one of the main points is I want you to understand when you're looking at the benefits that is being described by the developer, those are not necessarily true because there are no cost.
Okay,
Okay, it's a one-sided equation.
got it.
Okay.
I like numbers though. If you could give us
And-
numbers, Scott, that would be helpful.
And right, I mean,
I'd like to pass this around. This is the page from the budget revision summary from the school board. And I just want to make sure these numbers are right. It says enrollment has been updated to reflect total K-12 enrollment of 2,567, which is 8 students more than the previous year. Does that sound correct?
Sounds correct.
So is that a baseline, or are you expecting more or less per year, or is that number around average? If anyone wants to look.
We don't, I'm not gonna sure. Denise wants to, we just know like, for instance, it's difficult to forecast that because 3 to 4 years ago, we forecasted a considerable amount more. And most people in this community understand that. And that did not happen. So projecting it out in 5 years, it's kind of difficult because it's based
Oh, no,
on so
I
many
understand.
different equations.
But doesn't that go both ways when you talk about the special needs students? You can't really predict whether you're gonna get an influx of 10 or you're gonna get none.
Right.
So it's something to consider, but I don't think it's something that you should think of as inevitable. That's all.
No, and my point has always been in this whole conversation is I want you to understand what you're looking at. All right, so it's not just all benefits, and we obviously disagree with the developer and what their presentation shows. For instance, we have a, most people understand there's a data center going in down the road, right? And they at least showed in their presentation that we'll have $3 million worth of cost to the school district. Well, there's not going to be any school children out there, right? Because when you actually do an analysis on this stuff, you have direct cost and indirect cost. And the developer tonight is showing no cost whatsoever. Okay,
Can we also admit that economics is not a real science? It's a social science. No one can predict. He's got assumptions. You have assumptions. Every economist in the world has assumptions. The Federal Reserve has assumptions. I think the reality is I look at this more about trust, because anyone can come up with any numbers. I'm a research analyst too. I work for the federal government. That's what I do for a living. You can pull numbers to tell any story that you want, but it doesn't mean that they're all real because no one can predict. So when I look at this type of presentation, it's not just about those numbers to me. It's about trust. So a lot of this comes back to the developer in the community and trust and looking at their numbers and seeing if you trust them. If you don't trust them, then there's probably not anything anyone's going to say to change your mind. But I just wanted to put that out there that when people are throwing numbers back and forth, I am also a numbers guy. Those numbers can change. You can change one number somewhere and it changes all the numbers down the end. And I've addressed that in my thing as well as a threat is the assumptions. And I have questions of my own about some of the assumptions. But I just want everyone to know with all the numbers in the spreadsheets, no one can predict the future. No one knows if any of these numbers are correct. So I don't want to get too bogged down where everybody's going back and forth with their numbers because whose numbers are right.
Yeah,
It's just my.
well, I would somewhat agree with you. I would say in this plan document, almost the cost benefit but for almost irrelevant to this conversation. And that drives a lot of these when you're reading the document and your decision making. This project in reality is very simple and we will get to it. And there will be some numbers that matter that I think that we'll go through in time.
So Scott, I really appreciate what you're saying, and I think we did miscommunicate previously on your definition of cost benefit when we met previously. The 70, so the pie for the school district, we're projecting in 2025, the total pie is 148. I can't quite read it. It's costing the school district right out of the gate 72,000 because that's going to be allocated to the TIF. So that's the immediate cost. You then are left with 76,000. And your cost, your operational cost is what we've projected at 55,000. I think that's what 53,000.
And you
So,
yeah.
so that's why we don't have to even provide this for the TIF. But we wanted to try to understand and address specifically your concern.
and thank you, Don. We will always disagree on this.
Okay, that's fine.
At least you're honest.
That's fine.
And Dawn, how long have you been a part of this? I'm not sure this is an actual LLC, but it's a group that's together.
Yeah, so there's I've worked with the guys who are Pulse Development. It's 3 partners. And I've worked with them for 2015, 14, somewhere now. And so I've worked on financing their stuff and have presented a bunch of their deals to banks and successfully obtained financing and things like that. So I've worked with these guys very closely.
And so is Pulse then just the advisory group?
Pulse is the development group. Pulse, it's basically three partners is Pulse, and then Eric's in this deal too. So it's the four of them.
And that's where I'm confused a little bit. 'Cause
Yeah.
when you read through some of the stuff, it's not quite clear.
Yeah, so that's the ownership group. And then there's several of us that are, hired to help.
Okay,
do
thank you.
stuff.
I guess one other slide that you had up, can you go to the,
Can we address this one?
sure, yeah, go down.
I've always understood that the taxing jurisdictions will get zero the whole 23 years.
No,
Apparently that's not right.
no, it can be anything.
Could you
that the
explain
parties
that a little
agree to.
bit more, what you're saying here? How much let's
Right.
just pick the school,
Right.
how much they'll actually get? I can't really see any of those figures. up there.
Yeah, I thought this would be bigger.
Dawn, that packet that's beside you, the one that had the building on the front, it has this in there.
Explain that. School will
You can just
actually
see it a
get
little better there. That's what I was telling you.
Few nickels. They'll get
So
some. They're
right-
not gonna get zero.
Oh, no, right now the school is getting from this property
No,
about
not much.
$4,000 a year.
Right.
Okay, when the taxes go up to 148, that's where the developer and the school will split that pie. So the school will be then getting the 4,000 they've always been getting, and that's where the word increment comes in. What's the increment? They get that additional increment. So yes, they will be getting money.
But what is the form of money? You want to explain how we're going to be getting our money?
Yes, so the way the TIF works is that a taxing jurisdiction will retain their base. So whatever they're currently getting, the property, in this instance, the school districts of roughly $4,000, that base will continue to flow to the taxing jurisdictions. Now, the increment above, in most circumstances for property taxes, 100% of the increment that is generated above that base flows into a special allocation fund, right? So the school district is proposing this TIF plan that the school district will receive a 50% pilot or 50% capital contribution. So that capital contribution, which is the definition that's used in the TIF Act, that capital contribution of 50% will then be dispersed back to them by the city who holds the special allocation fund.
If I understand that right, then we have to ask the city for any money from this to use towards our capital projects. The city has to approve any of our projects. We can't use that money that comes back to us at will.
No, so what this is meant for, and I'll read that, I just want to make sure I have the definition. The city has to find in their ordinance, if this goes, when this goes on to the city, they have to find that these capital costs are a direct, that are being built. So this 50% that would flow back to the school district is a direct result of capital costs resulting from the redevelopment project, either necessarily incurred or to be incurred, and those are reimbursed back to the taxing jurisdiction. So there's not on the back end, and you receive a capital contribution from Marketplace. So, or is the city in that case?
We receive surplus.
No, you receive a capital contribution. There is no such thing as a surplus to other taxing jurisdictions other than the ambulance district and the fire district. They receive a reimbursement back. A school district receives a capital contribution, and that's what it is and what the ordinance states for Marketplace, just as an FYI. So a capital contribution
I'm sorry, but
No.
we have a pilot for that.
Yeah.
that I'll go back and look at the ordinance, but that is
Okay.
not prescribed under the TIF Act. And from the ordinances that I have read it and the memos I have read, I was not a part of that project. There was a capital contribution and should have been classified as a capital contribution, as there is no other mechanism under, if you surplus under the TIF Act, if you surplus, you have to surplus all. So if there's a surplus flowing back to one taxing jurisdiction under the TIF Act, you have to surplus to all of them. That's why there's a mechanism. It's another way for taxing jurisdictions who incur capital costs to then receive money back. And I don't know I was not a part of the 2017 TIF, so I don't know what it was, but I'm just stating that as my understanding, you currently receive a capital contribution from a different TIF, and I don't think the city prescribes it's a level of trust at that point, right? The city would make a legislative finding that you have the necessary capital costs. And those capital costs, you would get the money back to then apply to those.
Right, so that's a concern to me because we do get a pilot because we handle those budgets. So I can tell you that's what we have our pilots. And two, when I hear you say it's about trust and that we have to trust before we can spend that money that we get, that's concerning.
Can I jump in? There's obviously, my wife works in Maple. She's a teaching assistant.
Sure.
My mother's a retired teacher. My brother's a teacher in Bedford, Massachusetts. So I have all respect for public teachers and I understand where you're coming from, Scott. So I've read a lot about, I'm not from Missouri. I've been here about 4 years. I'm from outside of Boston. And I've read about the last 20 years, some of the abuses with Tiff. So I definitely understand where the school's coming from. But I would like to know if Eric could come up for a minute. Sure. So I've never met Eric before. Nice to meet you. I'm Adam. I'm part of the Main Street District. I'm the chair of the Economic Vitality Committee. So the schools always feel like they get left out, right? I think that's the main thing, right? Is that during these, the schools get left out and the students can sometimes be the ones that suffer. So I'd like to ask with you and with the school. I was going to wait till I did my SWOT analysis, but I just want to jump in now because I spend a lot of time and we're trying to get to that trust. That seems like it comes down to trust. So you pointed out a lot of parts of the comprehensive plan. I have a couple more that I can mention later, but there's an opportunity here for 2 other items with this project that would align with the comprehensive plan. So if Smithville LLC was willing to donate a small space inside the commercial area to the Smithville High School's real world learning program, that would align with ED 4.1. Build educational infrastructure at library and key nodes. That could act as a key node, not a huge space, maybe a wall off part of that down. I think you said you got 5,000 left over after your restaurant. Or 3, maybe you wall off 700. Of course, this is between you and the school. I'm just an idea guy. So this would also cover BE 1.6. Identify priorities and available resources for job training and workforce development, internships, and entrepreneurship programs. I know the real world learning is new. I like it. All right. I have the demographics from the 2020 census right here, if anyone wants to look at them. Smithville only has about 30% have college degrees. This is a working class town. Right? So the real world learning is for kids that don't necessarily want to go to college. And I understand that because I went to college right after high school. I graduated the University of Pittsburgh right before September 11th. And a year later, I joined the Army. And when I look back on it, college wasn't for me. It just wasn't. I did well at it and I went and got a master's degree. That's fine. But in that time of my life, I wish I had something like a real world learning program because I went to college and I wasted my time and my potential because I wasn't ready. So I guess the question would be, would that be something that the developer might be interested in and the school might be interested in because you're getting something real, something that you could use in perpetuity, right? It'd be donated. So it would be a space for the school to use with the real world learning program for as long as they needed it, right next to the Chamber of Commerce, right downtown, and we're working on it. We want that downtown to be bumping. Every time I go to Weston, I grind my teeth because it smells. You can smell it. Commerce, community, social stuff. We want to get some of that down here too. And it would be really cool to see the kids already down here networking, learning about real businesses. So at that point, I'm going to throw it out there. That's just an idea. And I thought maybe that could go to building that trust.
Well, so Adam, thanks for that. It just so happens that I had my first virtual meeting with Mr. Simon's class at 9:30 this morning with real world learning. So my own personal business is already involved in that. We had our first meeting today. So that's pretty easy answer for me. Yes. I have a very great relationship with the school district, with the teachers. I mean, my office is a revolving door. I've got typically on a year basis, I have 2 interns at all times. So that is something that I personally and professionally believe in.
So would you,
And I've done all this, so I've got, my history will prove that that's.
so you'd be okay donating a space for them to use? Like as a, what is it called?
I'm sorry.
His partners.
I know, listen, I throw it out there. I'm a win-win type of guy, so I
mean,
figured I want to do it, you know?
I don't,
Know what.
Fair enough.
Some people I gotta talk to.
And I understand. I was just trying to look out and give the school something, because a lot of times they're like wimpy from Popeye. I'll gladly play you Tuesday for a hamburger today. So I get it. So I figured I would ask to try to get something tangible. Maybe for the school.
yeah, I was gonna say, thank you, Adam. I appreciate it. And I didn't, understand putting Mr. Craig on the spot like that.
Yeah.
No.
Well, that's what
understand.
public meetings are for, right?
Well-
Keep it exciting.
Yeah, we'll politely say, let's go on.
Okay.
But I wanted to get back to the the capital contribution. That is not something we are currently doing on the Smithville market. Tiff, we've never submitted capital expenditure request to the city of Smithville.
And you wouldn't have to. That's the point. That's not a part of this.
And
the-
you're saying though, capital expenditures cannot be used for our operation. So it does not go to our teachers or our students.
You are correct.
Right?
That is the,
So
yes.
for this 50%
Mhm.
for 23 years will never go into the operations of the Smithville School District.
That is correct.
It will only be allowed for this definition of capital expenditure.
Under the TIF Act, correct.
Yep. What is the definition of capital expenditure?
Like would a new school fall under that? I'm assuming.
Yeah, hold on. I want to make sure.
What's the dollar threshold? Is it 5,000?
There's not a dollar threshold.
And the reason I ask this is because I've never seen this put together for another jurisdiction. I'm not sure.
A
Mr.
capital contribution.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Staley, if you've had surpluses from I know you've sat on many TIF commissions and I enjoy I know I've never been on the commission with you, but I know that you sit on many and seen many plans, so.
I was just sitting here thinking, I should jump in at some point. Yeah, surpluses we do receive all the time. You're right. If there is a surplus, it has to go to all the jurisdictions. For those of you who don't know, even though this new TIF commission is constructed a little differently, there's members from the county, there's members from the city, a couple of members from the school district. And then this slide that was helpful that has all the other taxing jurisdictions on it. I am here representing all of them. And so one of the things that I found interesting when I opened this plan was it's one of the first ones I have ever seen. And I do sit on several TIF commissions where one of the jurisdictions was receiving some sort of, let's call it a rebate. I know it's a capital contribution. Weird. Because the reason why most people would normally go to surplusing is because what they would do is find an equitable solution for all the taxing jurisdictions involved. And in this case, I'm looking and it looks like we have the library, the city, the handicap tax, the health tax, the mental health tax, and I think that's it, would actually pay 100% for the full 23 years. So I appreciate the net benefit to the school district slide here. And the gentleman that was up before mentioned that he could do this for all the taxing jurisdictions. I don't think it would be very interesting if he did it for all the other taxing jurisdictions because it would just be zero for 23 years. And so it is true. I did a little back of the, on my yellow pad math here real quick. And based on what I think we might see as far as residents in this place, we might have about 100. I'll speak to the library. That's who I'm with. Might have about 100 library customers. That would mean, because that's 55% of our community has a library card. They use it. So that would get us about 100 people, I think. I don't know. Somebody can correct me on that. But it costs us about $70 a year to provide service. So at that point, now we're spending about $7,000 a year in this development. And our number, I don't know, I'll have to go back and find it. It's like $100 or something. So at that point, you know, the other taxing jurisdictions that are in here really do have a problem because we're now actually providing service to folks who are not actually paying any property tax to us. And really what that means is that everybody else is subsidizing their library service or mental health service or everything else. And that's why, generally speaking, I think these things are usually set up as a surplus to all the taxing jurisdictions, not as a capital contribution back to one. So I was very interested in how the capital contribution works also, because I, like I said, I haven't seen it. So with that, I will let you all kind of explain further how this works.
Well, just essentially what I said. So with the capital contribution, and it is something that has been done in quite a few TIF plans that I have seen. I know I don't see all of them. But you are right. In a lot of other ones, they can do surpluses back. And if it's a surplus, it goes to all taxing jurisdictions. And that's something that's within your right to request. I mean, that is what this this recommending body is to do, right? You make suggestions that you see are fit and you would go to the developer and ask for those changes. You are allowed to amend the plan while this public body is open, this public hearing is open. You can make changes to the request to make changes to the redevelopment plan. So that is well within your right to do that. So when you surplus, a surplus of a certain percentage would go back to all taxing jurisdictions. Whereas a capital contribution, when there is an incurring of exponential capital costs, you can have a capital contribution made, which means that, like I said, there will be a finding in the ordinance of the city that says there is capital costs that are going to be incurred by the school district for this, and then they receive that money. That would be a 50% chunk or whatever percentage it is. They would receive that out of the special allocation fund. It would go back to them. And that's how that works.
Can you explain the Clay County part of this?
What do you mean the Clay County part of this?
Well, they're getting are they getting a capital
No,
or are they getting a surplus?
no, there are certain taxes under Clay County, or excuse me, under state law, there are certain county taxes that cannot be collected. So that's why you're seeing some measure of percentage that is being kept out. It's because there are certain taxes that cannot be collected under not necessarily the TIF Act, but various state statutes.
So 25%.
Mhm.
So going back to the school district, if people didn't understand, we will only receive funds as a capital expenditure. We will not receive any funds for our operations of our school district for 23 years on this project. Well-
Other than the base, right? The base that you
Base
receive.
of 4,000, which we
Right,
received
but I,
today.
just to be
Right.
correct, the base you would receive could be paid to any.
And under that scenario, we would actually be better off if this project never happened because we would at least receive that base for 23 years and no cost.
But even with it being approved, you would still get the base for the 23 years. Regardless, you would get the
And
base.
what
right?
type of,
Same
co-
base.
but
Well-
what type of cost has a dilapidated old hospital in the downtown? Can you put money on having a nice social downtown? We don't just, I mean, there's a lot of talk of money and this is downtown, the Main Street District. We're not just focused on money. That's the ancillary benefit. If you look at the comprehensive plan, the downtown is supposed to be the heart of the community. That's what we're trying to do. And I hate to get all kind of maybe sentimental or whatnot, but like our kids are having a rough time. And a big part of that is they feel isolated. They're inside, they're on TikTok, they're on social media. They are not out socializing with the community. And we want to bring the community downtown. So I know that the capital cost, that's definitely not great, right? It would be great if it could go into the operational cost. My wife could use a pay raise. Your teaching assistants don't get paid that much, right? But we also want to see that like you can't put a dollar amount to everything. And I think one of those things that, you know, I look at the downtown is it's not dead, but it's sleeping. You go there on any night of the week and there's nobody there. I would love to live in a town where we had young kids with bongos, you had kids doing art down there, They're hanging out in a safe place. They're seeing what it's like to be in a community, right? Kids nowadays, I feel bad for them. I grew up in the 80s. They've missed a lot. They don't have the same types of things that we all grew up with if you're over a certain age. And we want to bring it back. Now, it might sound naive, and even saying it out loud, it does sound naive, but that's what we're looking to do. So while I understand that leaving that hospital there would be a net benefit for the operational costs of the school, I think there's other social costs that you can't necessarily put a dollar amount on. And this type of project could really help with getting our downtown to be an actual place where bands come, local bands, right? Kids that want to do music, maybe they just come there to play. But you go down there and we have a pavilion that's empty, right? And it's sad. When I come through here on any given night, it kind of bums me out. It's a beautiful downtown. It's not falling apart, but it's got no soul. So I guess I'm just, for me, I'm
I
looking at,
understand.
where the
I
money
love your
comes
passion.
and, all that type of stuff.
So just,
So I'm done.
clarification. So you'll get the base regardless over if it goes through or not.
$4,000.
$4,000, right.
$4,000.
So is there a way that the extra money that you would receive, could you use that for your construction cost
Well,
versus,
Miller
and then that
pointed-
would free up your operating costs, so you're not budgeting, that's what I'm asking.
yeah, okay, so actually, our levy is set, by basically the voters. So whatever our levy is, and then we divide it into Fund 1, Fund 2, Fund 3, Fund 4. And it's decided by our voters. And so whatever goes into capital stays in capital, whatever goes into teachers fund stays in teachers fund. Now, the only two funds that we can move back and forth are our operations and our teachers fund. But once it goes in teachers fund, it stays in the teachers fund. The only one that we can is operations, and we get 0 for operations here. But as Ms. Miller pointed out, we are a recommending body. And if people are uncomfortable with that, we can make that recommendation in a motion eventually this evening. Okay, and is there questions about what we're saying? Capital expenditures versus operating the school district, giving money to students, supplies and teachers and everything.
What's the
Okay.
bond vote? What would that cover? Capital?
Capital only.
That's capital only. Can you do that? Can you go to the town and ask for taxes to be raised? I'm sorry. I'll put it out here now. I'm from Massachusetts. So people raise taxes all the time. I don't know if this is the type of place where even the thought of raising taxes is like a red line.
Well,
But you could always come back to the town to ask for more money, right?
so two out, you want to speak to
So-
that, Denise?
Let me ask something real quick. She said that we could change that, our governing body. So we can change it from capital to something else so that to surplus.
Sorry, yes, you can ask that change to be made,
Yes.
that you would take away, like, we wouldn't do a capital contribution, but instead you'd want a surplus to all taxing jurisdictions of a certain, that is a request you can make of the developer.
So that
We can change it.
Yeah.
So-
Which would include, and Mr. Jacoby's correct, it would include all taxing jurisdictions, everything, all the others, the city, the county, it would all go back. Anybody that has a property
Right,
tax.
right.
Is
So-
that the most equitable way? The
What?
surplus, is that the most equitable? Like, does that give everybody, it's the fairest for
Y-
every taxing jurisdiction?
Yes, everything would, whatever percentage, would be pro rata based on what your property tax rate would be, correct? It just would be the same across the board, it'd be what your property tax rate would be. Yes, you just surplus across the board.
Yes, so 25% across the board or whatever number recommending body.
Right, and this is just discussing property taxes because our EATs, which are our sales taxes, are already 50% is collected by the special allocation fund and 50% is sent back to the taxing jurisdiction by statute.
I guess outside of this, go ahead.
I was gonna say, is there a downside to changing it to the developer or to the school?
You would have to attest to what your downside would be. From the perspective, the downside would be they would have less money flowing into the special allocation fund to pay reimbursable project costs back. But the benefit would be that the taxing jurisdictions would see more of a benefit across the 23 years rather than just at the end of 23 years.
And that also depends on what percentage we come up with.
Correct. Yes, correct. It would
Yep.
depend on the percentage as well.
So there conceivably could be more for the developer, depending on whatever the recommending body. So.
I have a few other questions, but I'm not sure what the appropriate time is to intercede with. a
You
variety
all
of
can be
questions
asking
that they-
questions at any time.
Okay,
Good, before you do that and before we leave this, what is the developer's position on that? I don't know if you've thought that through, if you've really, because again, it's going to depend on the numbers. But is that something you guys are open to? Exactly, and I hesitate to put you on the spot at this moment. That's gets a little bit unfair.
But is that something you're
I
willing to?
I already did it.
It's more of a consideration.
Percentages would have to change.
I have a question about the percentage. We went through square footage of the project and the amount that's commercial or mixed or retail, mixed use. If I'm looking at it, is it correct that about roughly 10% is either commercial or retail and 90% is residential? I did the math. I put up the square footage and. Well, you had 9,300. Oh, so about 11% commercial for this project. So this project is primarily a residential TIF.
Which is a much needed product.
And I think there's differences in residentials when it comes to TIF. Like if this was a, hey, we're gonna build a large subdivision and we're gonna build another golf course, and it's gonna be right near a Costco. I think that's like a little different than maybe like a mixed residential use. So when he's saying this is like a much needed project, I think he's talking about the mixed use part of it, not necessarily the residential part. If it was single family, then it wouldn't be.
I would say from a taxing jurisdiction perspective, that they're kind of the same. I mean, not that one project's more desirable than another, but in terms of adding residents, adding services, they're pretty similar. So.
And for the school district, why that's so important to us is because, as we know, we want our community to grow and we need a commercial base. And that's super important to us to have a commercial base in our city. And we lack that right now. And so we do a really great job of educating our kids. And you guys have seen the results and you see the scores and you know that 97% of people move here for the schools, and that's information we've shared. We have strong schools and we have a strong community, and that's something we're sticking with. I think the concern for us is that we have to gather our tax dollars from our residents. And you ask, do our residents like to have more taxes to pay salaries? Not necessarily. I mean, we have a great community, but I don't know that anybody loves that. But I think for us, that's why it's so hard, is because when we look at adding things, typically commercial projects give you more money for educating kids. And, that's where my job is to be the steward for the kids. And so when I look at 90% as residential, that's why it's hard. It's not because I don't think it's great. And you're right, we've been partners with the school. So it's not a personal,
Right.
thing either. It's just trying to think about being that steward. It's hard when it's 90% residential.
I might
You
look
mind
at
if
something
you
like
mind
this.
if I respond to that?
Sure.
Okay, so I think that the approach that you have is correct, but there's a big missing piece, is that the school district is not growing. I mean, the numbers are there. You guys are actually losing students. And the reason being is that affordability in this community is really hard for somebody to come. And that's why you're not seeing early age students. And also your retention of teachers is not there as well, because they can't afford to live here. I know this because I talk to them. They call me, Eric, we're looking for a place to rent. Just got a position here at Smithville High School. What do you have available to rent? I'm sorry, there's nothing. They are commuting. You guys know this. We've talked about it. It starts with commercial, but the biggest problem right now, if you talk to business owners, is that they don't have employees that actually live here. Most employees, you go to McDonald's, ask them where their employees live. They don't live in Smithville. And so we're missing the big picture here. If you want your school district to grow, you have to have affordable housing. That's a word that people don't like to hear anymore. You're not supposed to say affordable. Real things.
Well, I like to hear it, but then you're saying no kids will live there. So that's a kind of a, that's a catch
Right,
22
well-
because I
well,
know that
so-
the townhomes north have lots of kids doubled up in them because I deal with those kids every day. You have families doubled up in those homes and multiple families live together. And so
Right.
to say that we get 5 kids.
Well, I think the figure was 10. It was that 5 would already
Okay.
be actually already here.
So,
So, because you do have the divorce situation
Right.
where there's a parent that's gonna live
Yes.
there and they have another home. There's a lot of
Right.
those things you could talk about. We're both talking the same thing, but the need is there. I mean, the missing part is it's happiness and it's gotta start somewhere. I mean, it's just real simple to me because I see it from a real estate standpoint and I see who's moving to Smithville and I see who's leaving Smithville.
well, I love
The other
that
thing,
thought.
the other thing that is missing, just so you know. Out. They want to downsize, but they can't afford to purchase another, I'd love to sell them. Eagle Ridge, but they're $340,000. Thing is being very disruptive back here and it's appropriate. Anyway. With that being said, I have last week. She lived in Harborview. Her mom lives in Excelsior Springs. She has health issues. She's driving every day to take care of her mom. Every day. She says, Eric, I'm looking for something for my mom to move into. For how? Not a piece of an elderly. Can't care for her. I just thing available. I talked specifically about this project. If this project was here.
So
Two big
thinking
missing
about a
boys here.
win-win, then I'm looking at this. So if I'm looking at the numbers right, and if this project, it says the loan will be paid off in 10 years. So why are we keeping a TIF for 23? Because that's not,
Well, we can always do a higher percentage. It's
Well-
math, right?
but we don't need to do a higher percentage. I mean, it's already paid off. That's what I'm saying. And then somebody's making that money on the 23 years and we're talking about cost benefit. We have somebody benefiting and somebody that
But,
has
but
the
the,
cost.
but the return. So I mean, I have Don go back for the numbers. Would be-
Well, it says it's $14 million for past 10 years every year. So I think the cost for the district over 23 years was, I read that. It says cash flow is for the past 10 years is 14,346,915.
The debt would be refinanced. The loan will not amortize down to nothing. It's going to be refinanced. And so it's not like the TIF will run with the property. If the property is sold, if the property is refinanced, it's always going to have debt on it. It's always going to have this big chunk of debt service. If somebody buys it, the amount of financing is going to go up, not down. So, but the 10-year time frame, and it just.
And I'm understanding you to say there's still a balance after 10 years, and this is just a 10-year lock and you're refinancing it after 10 years. Is that what you just stated? Yeah, that's standard on
not paid
commercial.
off.
No, it's not paid off after 10 years. Their loan is just going
I
to
thought that's what it
expire
said.
in 10 years.
Okay.
And so then when it's a balloon payment will be due on the loan, they'll have to refinance the loan after the 10 years and the balance of whatever that is. And I'm also hearing you say in this project that the original costs that are laid out, there's going to be additional costs that are going to have to be financed again and again, because if this Bank Midwest is like a lot of these banks, $9 million is their cap. They're not going to give you more than $9 million until you do some things and then come back in and do it.
Yeah, their cap is on it individually somewhere in the 25 to $30 million.
Okay, so much higher than some
Yeah,
of the
they're
smaller
owned by a
banks.
large institution out
Okay.
of Boston. So
It's not really relevant to this, but I was just for the committee that doesn't deal as much with commercial real estate and some of the multifamily because it's considered also commercial in a lot of those lights.
I would expect actually, Bank Midwest would put a construction loan on it. It very well could be refinanced as soon as the construction is done with a Fannie Mae loan or a Freddie Mac loan, or maybe an insurance company. Most likely that's what would happen. And that loan could go for 10 or 15 years. But it's dependent on the market conditions when we get to that point.
I know everybody's talking numbers. I have a different question for you.
Thank you.
You keep mentioning seniors. So when you build these units, this comes to fruition, will those be built ADA compliant, or where are you going with that there
Yes.
possibly?
Yes. Specifically, our focus is on that, on our main level, for those to be ADA compliant. There's a big need. Yes, sir.
Will there be an elevator in it at all?
Yes, we have two, one elevator.
I do have another question. I can remember when I was listening to the presentation on TIFs in general, that they were talking about, you could have one unit, or like in your plan, like, are you looking at one building for like 23 years and then come back later with the other building for an additional 23 years, or will this all be done at the same time?
That's correct. The plan calls for one redevelopment project area.
Do we, at what point, as far as your opinion goes, because obviously we're at 8:30 now, do we want to allow
Public comment?
more comments from the public? And then at some point, we're going to need to have the question come before the body, the three options that we have, which is either approval, not approval, or to put it off to another meeting. I have one question regarding that. There's a 30-day window that we have to work within. Now, is that 30 days for the next meeting, or is, I suspect it's 30 days for a decision to be rendered?
No, so what it is 30 days. We have from today, 30 days to have a continued hearing. And then once you have the continued hearing, we would close the public hearing at that point, and then you could vote, or you have 30 days past the closed public hearing to vote. However, once you close a public hearing, the ability to modify the redevelopment plan itself changes. You have some stipulations you have to work within.
So if we were to have a subsequent meeting to this, we would not have the opportunity to make those changes, or we would, just for
Yes, so
clarification?
so what would happen, and I provided the agenda for public hearing with so what is very important would happen is that we would keep the hearing open. We are required by state statute to state we would have to pick a time and a place today. We would state that, and the hearing would stay open until that point, and then we would have the public hearing at the continued hearing, which would then close. We are available, though, because this is a different TIF commission makeup. It's a 12-member instead of an 11-member. If we wanted to keep that hearing open past that statutorily prescribed 30 days, the mayor would have to come in, make a request to keep it open for another however amount of time, and then the board would have to vote if you wanted to keep that hearing open for a third time.
So if we wanted another one, if we wanted to continue it to another date after this one, we would need to set that this evening, which means that I think staff has probably got an idea of what would and would not be an open date for us. Should we decide that route?
Yes, we absolutely have to, per the statute. Yes, we have to set the time because we have to tell DED that and DOR that tomorrow.
And if we go back to the Linda's surplus question, would that be something they have to go and adjust numbers?
Yes, we
correct?
have to give them,
If that's a change that we want, would we vote on that tonight? And then he would have to go back and change that, or would he go change it and we wait for the next one to take a look at?
yes, so you would make a recommendation as to what needed to be changed, and then they would have to have time to go make that change if that's something that they, want to do. And then 7 days before the continued public hearing, 7 days, we would have to provide notice of all of those changes. And then, so we'd have to have that a week before. We would notice up all of the changes that had been made, and then you would look at that revised plan at the continued public hearing.
So tonight we need to describe any changes we want to make tonight.
Yes, but again, at the next hearing, we can still have, talk, we would have to have the mayor come in. I mean, we would have to make sure, because the request has to come from him per the statute. So the request has to come to him, but then we would still have the open public hearing that we can make changes. Once you close a public hearing, but before an ordinance is taken before the governing body, you are limited that you can't make changes that change the exterior boundaries of a TIF, that change the general land uses, and then substantially change the nature of a redevelopment project. Now, it's like the squishiest legal terms ever. So when we, and my firm has determined about 10%, but that could be, you know, it's just hard to determine what substantially changes the nature of a project.
What we're talking about. does
Would
surplus-
substantially
That
change
would substantially
the
change.
nature of a project, because you're talking a lot of money it's the percentages are going to change.
Well, the other thing is, if we ask for that, and then the numbers don't add up, if we ask for, are you saying we would ask for a specific change, or would we just, we'd have to ask a specific change of some sort, otherwise they don't have anything to crunch numbers on.
Right, you can ask for a that's a very good point. It would be, you know, we'd like to see this surplus back to the taxing jurisdiction, so they do have a number to work with. So then when they come back, you know, it's a matter of this works, this doesn't.
But what concerns me is if we come up with a number and it is an impractical number that the developer could not live with, then we've just burned through a lot of time. So it's the trick is to come up with, if we decide that that is a possible way to go forward, we have to come up with a number that is somewhere in the realm of reality that that conceivably the developer could live with, depending on how the numbers fell. So that's why I'm a little bit concerned about that, because I don't want to come up with an unrealistic number and then
Gary?
put them into a bind. Yes, sir.
I think it looks like maybe the developer and the taxing institutions should get together themselves and discuss this and see if they can come up with a number that would be work for everybody.
The issue with that becomes it would have to happen in an open body, correct? So but I mean, sorry,
they could have
I have to think about this, that, you know, we have 30 days. We can do multiple here. So you could do a hearing, right, in a week and then talk about percentages, you know, whatever prescribed amount of time that they would know would work. We continue the public hearing, and then within 30 days, I would have to look to make sure that would work. But I think based on my interpretation of the statute, we just have 30 days that's the maximum time we can wait to have the continued
The
hearing.
thing is, we do, I mean, obviously things have to happen,
Mhm.
but I am asking that mainly because for procedural considerations. Good, bad, or different idea, I couldn't tell you, but I'm trying to at least explore those options
Mhm.
and what those options would be if we were to decide to go forward before we really seriously consider them, because like I said, we have to have consideration for the county, but also consideration for the developer and their ability to put together numbers that they can live with. So I'm trying to accommodate both sides on this thing, and I don't know that we can, but it's worth at least discussing. Yes, ma'am.
So questions, can you guys hear me? Do you by chance have a better, what you guys would like to see? Do you have numbers or a percentage or surplus versus what it is now?
I don't know. Go ahead.
I was
I
just
have
gonna
something
say,
I wanna
yeah.
say, but I
Everybody
don't
just
wanna
ask
go
you
there.
guys of
Yeah.
what would be
We haven't discussed.
a win-win for both.
Here's the thing is we also have to get an idea about this cap on expenditures that Ms. Miller's referring to. And that's the reimbursable cost that's directed to the
Okay.
developer.
Okay.
So when we get a handle on that, then we would probably have a pretty good idea what our percentage would be.
Okay.
Surplus better for you, for the school?
Yeah, and we need operation funds.
So the surplus just provides you capital costs,
It only provides us capital costs.
but it's better than what,
No, sorry, the surplus would allow you to use, the
Yeah.
capital contribution limits them to
To
just
just
capital
capital.
costs, but the surplus would allow them to use those monies to go into their operational fund as well. So the surplus,
surplus would be
Does that make
beneficial.
sense? Yes,
Yeah,
surplus.
I'm
would
asking
be-
Okay,
We
that
all
was my
would like
question.
to
What would be a
yes.
better?
I don't know. I think I was thinking before, if we could adjust even capital contribution versus pilot, since we had pilot from the other tip, we would prefer to have pilot over capital contribution just because it gives us the flexibility.
Well, that would
And
be
that's
that would
where-
be a surplus.
Right, so that's where I was, so we're speaking in various things and some of us are more educated on it than others, me being one that this
Well, we're
isn't my
talking about
daily.
the same thing. When
So
you say a
yes,
pilot,
when
it's
we've
a
had
surplus.
capital contribution, that really limits the district, but if we would have pilot, that would be, or a surplus, that would be much better.
That's, yes.
Eric, I don't know if you or Don can comment to if you've looked at surplus as an option. It sounds like there's several members of this committee that are interested in whether you've looked at that. Is that a viable option? Because it sounds like it's being considered. So I want to throw that out there to you guys to ask if it's even been considered.
We've been pretty much focused on the model that we've shown. That's really where we've been focused at.
What would that, if you had to change to surplus from capital, what does that do? How does that affect you? We know how it affects the school. How does that affect you?
So what it would do would, instead of doing a 50%, so you would almost go back to zero with the school district, right? So instead of a 50% pilot flowing into the special allocation fund, you'd take that away. And then across the board for pilots, it would be a percentage that would not flow into the special allocation fund. Does that make sense? So
Maybe then they could
actually,
explain.
I have this as part of my PowerPoint. Hold on.
So would,
But does it impact the developer?
Yes,
at the end of the
so
day?
the developer, what it impacts is not as much money. Property taxes, 100% of the increment that is generated above the base flows into a special allocation fund. And that special allocation fund is what repays the developer the reimbursable project costs that are outlined. And so instead of 100% of that, it would be, and I'll just for whole numbers, 90% would flow into that, and 10% of each property tax generating taxing district would get 10% of their increment back. Thank
Miss-
you.
Miss-
So like, if you see my handy dandy little
Flow chart.
ish. So what you see here is before TIF and during TIF, and just kind of a visual of how it works. So if you have a real property assessed by, you have $50 of total tax revenue as your base. Before TIF and during TIF, $50 is flowing to the taxing jurisdictions. When you have TIF, the total increment, which in this case, total revenue so the total revenue overall is $5,000, but you have a base of 50. So the increment is $4,950. That money flows into a special allocation fund that is then able to pay back the developer a reimbursable project cost. If we did a surplus across the board, less of that pilot would flow into the special allocation fund for the developer. It would end up going back to the taxing jurisdictions to be used. If that
No,
makes sense.
So,
I misspoke.
oh.
I just wanted to make, sorry.
Yeah.
Ms. Buckmiller, your question, I believe, was if it's a 50% capital contribution versus a 50% surplus,
It's
does
worse
it-
for the developer.
it's
Because if you-
worse.
Because with a 50% surplus, it's 50% across the board. So all property tax
Well,
jurisdictions.
Right. And now I'm just saying for one.
Oh,
entity,
I'm
one
sorry. I
entity.
misunderstood.
Yeah, no, we understand it would be
Okay.
across the board. And so you, in theory, you would try to try to lower the school district.
Right. So instead of
surplus.
50%, you would get a 20 or whatever, a
Whatever,
20%
uh,
surplus,
If
right?
everybody came up with 30%, whatever it was.
So
keep the
ins-
same number the
Instead of just a
developer had.
50% surplus to the school district, it would be a 20% to the school district, to the library district. Now, I do want to make a note that statutorily, the fire district and the ambulance district are able to set a reimbursement rate back to themselves. It doesn't make sense. There's no such thing as reimbursement, but that's the legislature. A reimbursement. So they are receiving all of their increment back because they're allowed to do that under the statute. So they're not really a part of this discussion.
So what you're saying is, if we went with a supplement, that the developer would, instead of 50%, the schools would go to even less of amount and the developer would have to go with more of amount. Is that?
Yeah, yes, that would probably be the case, but we would have to look at the numbers, but that actually might work out better for us because we need operations funds, not capital funds.
They wouldn't be limited in what they could use that money for as a capital contribution.
So if I can, again, I've just got a yellow pad here. So it looks to me like, I mean, just based on looking at all the different tax rates, I think if we went to a surplus just straight from 50%, you're talking about a 15% decrease in what the developer is going to receive. So, from there you can do math to figure out what's what, but that's, if you just made that change with 50% still as the number, I'm pretty certain that's about what it is. But I haven't eaten.
But that's
down
sort
to-
of the point really is because we're wanting to get some flexibility for the taxing entities. But we don't, there's no point to that if the amount is going to be something that is unpalatable for the developers. I mean, the idea is to come with, as you were saying, a win-win.
Right.
And that doesn't sound like we're quite there with those kinds of numbers, but I don't know.
What if he drops it down to 40? Is it better for the school to have less in operational costs that they can use or more in capital costs?
Right. So to answer all these questions, I think it's probably, we would throw it back to the developer to run a couple scenarios, right? We're trying to solve this problem on the.
Can I make
on
a
a whim,
suggestion?
so-
So what I think would be best is that we come back with 3 different scenarios for you guys out of respect for your guys' time this evening. Also still allow some public comment if there's somebody who feels like they want to come up and speak. I feel like they showed up here and I feel like they should be heard. My partners are fine with that, if you guys are, so.
Do we need to move to public comment first, or can we make a motion to?
Let's see what the council has to say.
We need to move to public comment, and I have to do something too before we move to public comment, but I would say yes, after public comment, and if anything else comes out of that, then we would make a motion to request that the developer make this plan. Then we could close the public hearing and then not close the public hearing. I'm sorry, you're right. Sorry, you'll leave it. Sorry, close the public comments. That's what I meant to say. Thank you. We would close public comments, keep the public hearing open, but then go with our motion to continue that I've drafted.
Would it be possible, because we're talking about rather delicate maneuver here, would you mind during the time before we move into that, writing out a little script so that we make sure that the motions are in fact precisely what we need them to do?
Yep.
If everybody's
date.
okay with that.
Oh, so that motion's drafted for you already, but I'll work on the motion that we need to make the change to the redevelopment plan.
I'd make the motion to move to public comment.
Hold on. Not yet.
I'm sorry.
I do have to enter this into the record for the Board of Aldermen later on. So all this is the TIF plan itself, all of our notices, the affidavits of publication. It's just our procedural stuff that we are entering into the record, and Linda will have this. That's
You're
all I
talking about
needed.
the top page, not the entire packet.
Oh no, this is all going in the record.
Okay. So I'm sorry, let me back that up again. So you're saying that we can now go to public comment
Yes.
without derailing anything. What I'd like to do, and you have, oh, very good. Is that the way the procedure goes in these, is that people sign up for the sheets and then we have them come up in that order, or can you educate me on what?
Are you
used
okay?
to
We
there?
did have outlined pro and anti. Are we okay with just a mix, or does
I
it have
just
to
say
be,
we
is that
could go.
prescribed?
Yeah.
Okay. We can work from that list. One thing that we have discussed is the way that we address public comment through all of our public meetings is we limit those to 3 minutes. I can set a timer
Thank you.
and I will actually set it so it will ding so everyone can hear it. If that will work.
That would be very good. So do we work only from the sign up list, or is there a possibility? of
We'll
going
work
beyond
through our
that?
sign up list, and if others hear something and determine that they would like to speak, if they can let Gina, and if you'll raise your hand, Gina, if you can get to Gina so that she can add to that list.
The other thing that I would mention is, and I believe we have to do this, and that is when citizens come forward, they should say their name.
Their address.
And their address, okay,
Mhm,
because
absolutely.
obviously there are audio as well as video recordings, and they need to have that, so they match up.
That is correct. And if I may, for point of order, Gina, have we had anyone on Zoom express an interest in speaking? Okay, so Gina will continue to monitor that as well and let you know that. One thing I might also suggest, because I think Gina, the list was, we had a number of people, correct?
3.
Oh, there are 3. Oh, okay. Okay, I'm sorry. I saw the lines, not the names. I thought, well, we're here all night. Okay, then never mind. Okay. So, okay, so we do have someone on Zoom to be recognized. I don't know if you want to recognize them first or.
Let's go ahead and do the Zoom first because we never know when the technology is going to go south on us.
There you go.
Does that individual know that they have a 3-minute waiting or list? Oh, I thought you
Oh,
said
so
somebody
and she's
online.
on the list already, so she left her. Yeah.
Where, is there anything else I need to make mention of?
I
Or
don't
we
believe
have
so.
it?
If you let me get
Okay.
my timer ready here.
Very good. Everybody does these things slightly differently. I want to make sure I'm doing the right method here. With that, please come forward. The microphone seems to be on. There's a green light. So Jennifer, I'm sorry, Jennifer would be first, right? Very good. You come forward, please.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Pease. I live at 206 Hampton Drive. First thing I want to say is I've lived in Smithville on and off my entire life. My 21-year-old went through all of his grades here. I am not against this development, but I am against the tip request. The old hospital is unsafe. It's an eyesore. There's asbestos in the building. And yes, we need to put something there. But the parcel of land was bought by numerous owners, knowing all of these problems and issues. Why should a developer buy a parcel, decide its plans to be, I thought 50%, but 90% residential, and he wants the city to hold the tax revenues for them exclusively? I had some questions that kind of been answered through the presentation. Children, lots of kids aren't going to be allowed to live there. I was a single mother. I crammed 3 kids in 1 bedroom and slept on a couch. I wouldn't even have been qualified to live there. My biggest issue with the schools is there will be an increase of students eventually. Regardless of kids going to school, every taxpayer pays more money to the schools than any commercials from what I heard tonight. Every residential property pays taxes to the school if kids go to school or not. So in my eyes, it doesn't change that only 5 children can live there. The entire building needs to pay their tax to school like all the other senior citizens' homes in the city. This is something that I did not hear tonight. I work for a water district in Platte County. I didn't hear the upgrades. You got water and sewer. You have it's one line. 85 kitchen sinks, 85 showers, 85 toilets. There's no way, from my perspective on life, that an 8-inch or a 12-inch main, and it could, it's a lot. You've got homes and businesses. You've got, in my district, a developer comes in, they pay for everything. TIF or not, I hope that that's addressed for the downtown businesses so things aren't backing up in their basements. Parking, 92 spaces for 85 apartments, guaranteed 92 spaces. The rest of them are on the street. All of the parking that's being proposed is going to be public as well. So senior citizens who live here that cannot get they don't have a handicap space, have to park down off of Church and walk all the way up Main to get to their apartment because there's no spaces available. There's 92 spaces for 85 apartments. Price point, $1,500 for a 2-bedroom apartment is expensive, especially for a family. My impression of the way the apartment prices go, you don't price apartments for your renters what they can afford. You price them so you can pay back your loans and make an income. Facts are facts. The developer knew the issue. I'm done. Okay, sorry.
That is time. That is
I
3
wasn't
minutes.
sure if I wasn't sure what that
Yeah,
was.
sorry, I did. Yeah,
microphone next
yeah,
time.
exactly.
Very subtle indeed. Next would be Alicia Neff. Online, very well.
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Yes, my name is Alicia Neff. I live at 708 Quincy Boulevard. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I know it's probably a good thing I had to leave, so I'm not in the same room as everybody who's against it, but I'm actually for this project. As a Smithville citizen and a business owner downtown, I think that the hospital obviously has to go. And I feel like if a TIF is what's necessary to make it happen, then we need to seriously consider it and try to make all the efforts from all sides. The hospital's been vacant, like Eric said, for at least 10 years, and it's changed ownership several times. Every time you're online or seeing a citizen survey, all the residents complain about it being an eyesore, kids are breaking in, it's complete safety hazard, all that. And we also need more retail downtown. I'm excited, even if it is only 10% or whatever it is, to have more retail and food options. I feel like if we have the opportunity to take care of all of those things and we're still finding reasons to object to the idea, I mean, this kind of seems like a great opportunity to take care of a lot of birds with one stone as far as getting rid of the eyesore and helping everybody. So hopefully we can come to terms with the school. And I mean, I think Eric, knowing him, he'll do his best to find a common ground. I bug him plenty about all of his other developments. He's probably considered blocking my number a few times, but he has done a lot of great things for our community. And I think any conversations I've had with him regarding this project, I think he'll really take everyone's consideration into the process and into mine. Sorry. So, I mean, I just think our downtown has made great strides in recent years, and this development would really help us maintain that momentum. So, yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Neth. Mr. Wright.
Hi, I'm Weldon Wright. I live at 423 Fletcher Drive up in Harborview. And Mr. Jacoby, I applaud your recognition of what's happening to the schools with the money. We call this the riverboat move, smoke and mirrors. If you recall, this happened when we voted the casinos in. All of the money for the casinos that were going to be on the river was going to go to education. And what happened? It had to go to the general fund. What happened? None of the money got allocated to schools. History, it's going to happen. This project is going to happen whether you voted in a TIF or not. Now, one of the sticky points is for this project to happen, and Eric alluded to it, they have to take public parking from downtown. The parking they're taking is going to close that funeral home. That funeral home uses those parking lots. It's not going to be there anymore. And if somebody tells you I'm buying land from the city and I'm going to make it public parking, the only way you assure that is for the TIF to request that for 23 years. If not, a week after that parking lot is bought from the city, it becomes private because there's no control. It's a private entity. So you're losing all your downtown parking. As far as sales tax is concerned, rental property doesn't pay sales tax. The only sales tax you're going to see is from that restaurant. And if it's the restaurant I think it is, they already pay sales tax to Smithville. They're just moving locations. I may be wrong about that, but I'm guessing it's Kozak's. And I think they're going to move locations. That's just my speculation. Eric could tell us, but he hasn't. He just says, I'm incorrect. Okay. Are they coming in new from Kansas City? Or, yes. Or they're not a Smithville? Okay. Yeah, I thought they had, but there was a question. Oh, I haven't seen that yet. I get around sometimes. Sometimes I move. But the thing is, if this project goes through, you don't have to worry about your school money. Clay County has numbers for you. They tell you how much they're going to assess that building for, and that's what you're going to get. They don't need TIF money. It's a $14.3 million project, and they need your my 1.2 million to make this work. I don't think so. I got another note here, if I can find it. Let's look. Okay. Oh, some other things you need to do is affordable housing. Again, I remodel. I do make readies for apartments. We just finished remodeling a bunch of townhomes, and they raised their rent from $1,100 to $1,500, 2-bedroom unit. That's acceptable. But the median rent in Smithville, Missouri, I just looked it up, $630. It's on the Smithville school site when you check it. So that's more than double. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Garbus, I hope that's pronounced correctly.
Good evening. My name is Mike Garbus. I've been a homeowner in Smithville since 1995. And in those 28 years, the thing that I notice about our downtown is that it pretty much looks like the downtown when I moved here in 1995, except for the stage and the shard of the Twin Towers has stayed and has remained permanent. But I've seen a bevy of businesses come and go in the downtown. Now, my side opinion, which is free, I can't understand why this downtown hasn't flourished already. And I can't understand why we don't put signage up at each end of town and in the middle of town to let people know that we have a quaint, historic, and somewhat vibrant, I'm not in the chamber, but getting more vibrant downtown. My question that I have is away from numbers and money to the question of aesthetics and effect of the project being talked about. Now, a 4-story apartment building would then become the skyline of Smithville. Whether you like that or not, that's up to you. We already have a little bit of that with the McDonald's sign down on the south end. So I'm just sort of asking that this body would go into a little bit more of the impact in terms of the downtown area. Right now, it's pretty quiet, pretty quaint, but when you have restaurants and other shops, and you have and then of course the residential units, I can't help but think that that's going to make a pretty big impact in terms of traffic, hustle and bustle. What are they going to be able to do or what's going to be needed to handle that? And I'm just asking, and I'd sure like to see that gone into as far as what that's going to do to impact. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other people signed up? Are there any other citizens wanting to comment? Please come forward, and if you could sign up at the desk there, that way we'll go ahead and we'll capture your information.
All right, my name is Scott Haggerty. I live at 18165 South Ridgely Road here in Smithville, Missouri. I'll be really brief. I agree with a lot of things that people have said, and I would agree that hospital is an ugly eyesore. I would agree that hospital needs to come down. I would agree it's in the public interest for the hospital to come down, and I would agree the public needs to help pay for the hospital to come down. However, in Mr. Craig's own financial write-up, that's at a cost of about $220,000 to $250,000. Far less than what the whole TIF's going to cost the community. I'm a free enterprise guy. I'm a free capitalism. I think that's the way things work. Once the blight is removed, I think the project should stand on its own. If it doesn't work financially, it's not a good project. It's not a good project for them. It's not a good project for the taxpayers. So again, I agree this community ought to help remove that eyesore. I agree that we ought to help get rid of that, bring it down to a level playing field. After that, any development needs to stand on its own.
Very much.
Hi, my name is Denise Asgian, and I've been part of this community since just after 9/11. And I've been a vendor, been part of the downtown events. I've done a lot of fundraisers. I've been assisted with rejuvenating the farmers market, and I'm fully aware of all the events that go on downtown. And the one thing that seems to be missing in the conversation is there's a comment of promoting that it would be available to senior citizens. Yet there are only 4 dedicated handicap spots. And so then the questions have to arise, if you're going to rent a spot, are we ADA compliant? When I look at the city's website per code, we are, so I can't quote it and I can't find it, but looking at our city IBC codes for ADA compliance and per the amount of parking spots per dwelling unit, the 173 is just to me, a false presentation of what is to be provided to the people who are going to live there. And then so if you look at how many, I think it's approximately, my notes show, you need per bedrooms or per square foot, you need 1 to 2 vehicles. So if you look at 85 units, 170 dedicated spots, not to mention the city street fund or the city street front to each commercial person has to have a spot per employee, has to have a spot for patrons. And I do remember when Justice Drugstore was there, that every spot all the way through the city was lined up when he had a big event. Then we're also looking at big vending events, which the developer does provide for one of them, 3,000 people. So if you're going to take away city spots to dedicate towards his development, where are the city spots? And I've gone around the whole town. I've taken photos of the whole town. I'm looking at all the dedicated handicap spots that are on that plan. Very inadequate for the city street projection. There were no handicap spots along the street for the potential of the people utilizing the commercial facility, which is 2 stories. So estimate how many employees are going to be there. Then I do have a question, which perhaps is for the city administrator or mayor. So you take away and you sell the municipal lot, which is behind the buildings along the other street front. Are we recalculating what our city code is to be able to make sure they have the adequate spots? So are we taking away from them? So I agree with the comment from Mr. Wright or whoever it was that, so now let's have a funeral, which we've seen it lying clear down Bridge Street. We've seen, so do we just give these spots away? And then I don't know how much time I have, but you look up city nuisance codes, you look up municipality codes. You cannot leave a vehicle there overnight or you'll be ticketed. What are these residents going to do?
Thank you very much for your
Mhm.
comments. Are there any other citizens who wish to address? Seeing none.
Could we see if Steve has any comment by chance?
Yes, I'm sorry, I had forgotten. Please, I'm sorry, Steve, we didn't mean to leave you so far out. You didn't think we forgot you, did you?
I don't have a comment.
I did just want to ask a question before we adjourn. On the development team summary, there were 90 single-family homes that were cited as being developed in Smithville. Could you tell us where that project is? It's at the townhomes project. So this is on your guys' development team summary, and I was just going through reconciling some of the projects that Pulse has done just for the trust factor that Adam alluded to here, but there are currently developing approximately 90 single-family homes in Smithville, Missouri.
What has been developed are over 90 homes by them already, by us.
So is there,
That includes,
that's, I guess, why I was
we built-
questioning
we
the
built-
statement. I was like,
We built out the rest of all of Wildflower. I
okay.
believe We had 43 lots there.
So there is not a currently developing community of 90 single-family homes.
No, that was how many homes have been built.
Okay.
And then there are, I think approximately an acreage and developments coming forward. There's approximately about 200 acres that they currently own. They
Okay.
own 140 acres off of KK and 169, and then 80 acres off of basically kind of by Horizons. You've seen the trees that got cleared out there off that highway.
Thanh you. I was just very like,
Sorry,
where-
that was probably my
didn't know
typing.
where
That
this
probably
was
me
and like
typing.
trying to figure out what is going on here. So thank
Yeah,
you for
I
clearing that up.
verified with Jack that they are the biggest permit puller in the last 5 years in Smithville and have already built over 90 plus homes.
Okay, thank you so much.
More comments before we start moving towards
Before we start moving.
winding
towards
us
the
down?
continuance.
Yes.
Yeah, I was
Setting
gonna say,
another meeting.
mine's more of a winding down question or point. Have have we made sure the developer has a list of our questions that all the commissioners have received?
Oh, yes, I've already done that.
Okay,
Yep.
all right. So we want to make sure that has happened. Is the TIF plan available for the entire public to review? Okay. And then I know that this is a different formation of a TIF commission, and not everybody was here the evening that this was discussed. Can you go over what a yes vote looks like, what a no vote looks like, and then obviously the third option is continuance, but we all understand that, but what a yes and a
Yes.
no vote looks like.
So a yes vote has to be a majority of the board, or I keep calling it a board, I'm sorry, a majority of the commission is a yes vote. A tie vote is a vote in opposition. And obviously a vote in opposition is right, you voted down, correct? So no matter what, a vote, whatever it may be, will go to the Board of Aldermen. If this board recommends approval, that would go to the Board of Aldermen for them to vote on and make their, you're just recommending the findings, they have to make the findings. If you vote in opposition, that does go on to the Board of Aldermen. They can vote it in over your vote in opposition. However, the developer is then limited in what reimbursable project costs can be paid towards. They can only be paid towards the grading and clearing of land and demolition of buildings. And I should note that that's a super majority of the Board of Aldermen as well. It would take a 2/3 vote to overturn any vote in opposition of this board.
That's good for us to know because those are nuances that we don't necessarily all have access to.
Thank you for bringing that up. I forgot that not many people were, everybody was
I
here.
just wanted to make sure that everybody understands what this stuff looks like going forward.
I've got one last thing, since the developer is going to go back and bring back some scenarios. This really isn't for the developer, I don't think, so much as the city. And it kind of goes back to kind of my theme from earlier about how taxing jurisdictions have different incentives and different roles to play in this. But I noticed in the reimbursable project costs, there is land purchase from the city and then some parkland dedication fees. And my assumption is if the city was willing to forego those, we could help fill some of that gap. There's nothing that says the city can't donate the piece of property to the project if the city thinks this project is important. So otherwise, it becomes part of what the other taxing jurisdictions are helping contribute to. So I would encourage the developer to talk to the city about whether they'd be willing to forego that fee and to donate that piece of property. Thank you.
Counselor, would that be within the scope of what this body could recommend?
No, the real estate agreement will be outside of this body.
Very
It would be a separate agreement between the city and the developer has to go through the normal processes for purchasing city property.
Thought so. I just wanted to verify that. Thank you. Okay, any further comments before we, and you have our motion.
I can state this.
If you want to state it and then a member could possibly just say, I would like to make that motion. That way it
Okay.
would be less repetitious.
So I think a motion would look like I would move to ask the development team to revise the 110 Smithville redevelopment plan to include scenarios of surplus payment in lieu of taxes.
Is there a motion on that? And moved and seconded. So we need to go ahead and, do we do any discussion or just go ahead and do a vote?
Go ahead, if you want to do. I
Is there
mean,
any discussion on that before we before vote? Very good. In that case, those in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Very good. The motion does pass. Yes, sir.
So we can know what our marching orders are. Is there, I know we're probably gonna get to when the next meeting will occur.
Mhm.
But is there a time frame in which the revised plan needs to be provided?
yes, we would have to do it 7 days and I'll send you the statutory language.
7 days?
7 days in advance of the meeting. So 7 days prior. And like I said, I'll send you the statute and language.
Sir, do you have an idea of what kind of time? Does that feel like a timeline that you can live with?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know he has to.
So we have to live within 30 days.
Sorry, we'll have
So,
to have that 7 days.
I am
beforehand.
being polite, sorry.
Sure,
Actually, I figured if he said so, they get us off the hook a little bit. Anyway, very good. So our next motion would be to,
Continue the hearing. So oh, I thought we voted. Did we not vote on this one? Oh,
We did.
Yeah,
We
we
voted this
they
in.
voted. So we need to decide when we're going, everybody needs to look at their calendars. So let's decide
I'm
when we can
assuming
do
it needs to
this.
be at least 14 days out since we need to give them 7 days prior. Is
The
that-
week of the 24th of April that Saturday is exactly 30 days from today's date, just as I looked this up before we came in. So we could, but I'm just saying that's your time limit, right? That's your
26th.
yeah. Yeah.
I'm just throwing out is the 26th a good day?
Oh,
'Cause
hold
now
on. I
we check
gotta
our
do my
calendars.
math. Yeah.
is there any time that, that work needs to be done by staff that we have to account for within that time period?
That would only allow though, if we do 2 weeks from tonight, they would only have a week to get their. Yeah.
I will be unavailable the evening of the 20th. I host a forum. So
Did we say the 19th? What did you say, Bruce?
Yeah, the 24th would work within 30 days. And it's a Monday.
Monday, the 24th.
Monday, the 24th?
Okay,
I'm open that day.
Oh, sorry. You guys. Okay. Adam, you will be good. Okay.
6 o'clock. Yeah, this.
Look at that. You guys are very efficient.
so the date we have arrived upon is Monday,
Monday, April
April
24th.
24th
and at this same time.
at 6
p.m.
o'clock. Yep. So you'll see the motion in the order of business for public hearing. You should read that with the date inserted.
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
Whoever wants to make the motion, it's in my order of business for public hearing, how that should be read. Just insert the date, Monday, April 24th.
So specified time.
Yes, it's all in the time.
Oh, it's all in this.
It's
so
all in the
we're
motion.
Doing is filling in.
I
just
got the
date.
motion.
Okay.
Motion, I moved that the public hearing remain open and be continued to Monday, April 24th, 2023 at 6 PM in this room in City Hall.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion, seeing none. Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Very well. Do I,
Nope.
I was gonna say, I don't.
That's
wanna
it.
get- I
Don't
even
touch
wanna-
anything, Jared.
I don't want to touch my gavel at this point.
Nobody move.
Against all.
Keep it open.
Thank you very much.
Hey, I saw a couple people take potty breaks.
Thank you. Here's the utility. Line item.
I was telling her that. Yeah. However, they want to take the bar. I'm going to stop there.